All right, guys, today we have a real special guest in the house. This man has been around for 3 decades now in the game. He's produced some of your favorite joints. You might know him by his name, but you definitely know his work. You know, I'm talking about the one and only Mighty Vic.
Yo, what's going on, Panda?
What's good with you, Vic?
What's good?
How you
What's
doing
good?
today, bro?
Everything is good, brother. Everything is good. And you?
Man, I'm so grateful to have you on the platform today. You know, with my interviews, I like to start at the beginning and do things in chronological order so we can give the people a better idea of, you know, where you came from, how you got to where you are today. So, where were you born?
Manhattan, in New York City. Um, the hospital don't even exist no more. Polyclinic.
Wow.
So you can imagine.
So how long did you live in Manhattan for?
Not at almost the age of 9. We moved out to Queens. We moved out to East Elmhurst, Queens.
And did you grow up with any siblings at that time?
Yeah, I had two older sisters, 10 and 11 years older than me.
And so you're the
Yep.
youngest.
Yeah, the youngest. So, you know how that goes. And the only boy. So,
Right.
you become the king of the household.
So your house, right? Like, was it a very traditional household?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Traditional Puerto Rican. I mean, where I grew up was across the street from Lincoln Center, right? So that whole area they used to even before I was born, they called it what is it, Little San Juan, right? And those were the Amsterdam Avenue projects. And it was in the back of the Lincoln Center. I don't know if you've ever been. Um, in the backstage, the outside stage. So then, out, in back of the outside stage, you'd see the projects from there.
Wa- Wow. And were you
Yeah.
growing up with both your parents in the household?
Yes, both parents. Correct.
So, what was
So,
it like for you as a child growing up in Manhattan and Queens?
well, I mean, I loved the city. I mean, when we were moving, I couldn't even imagine living anywhere else. Um, in growing up, I mean, they used to at that time they'd have events and things for the community. I mean, obviously it was a poorer community, right? So they had like things like West Side Story. I grew up watching West Side Story is one of my favorite um, movies of all time, right? I think it has one of the most incredible soundtracks. Um, so they uh, twice, I think twice in the summer for 3 nights, they would have West Side Story play free for the entire community. So everybody would go, I mean, and it was peaceful. There was no problems, packed to the rim where uh, you could not find a seat, a standing room, or you sit by the bushes, whatever it was. It was the entire project was there, 100% peaceful, and they'd have, I mean, it was quite the experience. Nothing that you're going to experience today at all.
What year are we talking about?
So we're going back, had to be at least 69.
Wow. So, like, you're
Yeah,
how old at this time?
I'm like 5 years old. I was born 64.
You're 5 years old at
Yep.
this time. Wow. Okay. And what are your parents doing for work at this time?
My dad drove, um, he used to do deliveries for the only film editing rental company in New York. So this is when they had tables for splicing film, right? So it was two brothers that owned the company. They had the only game in town. So he was well actually before that he worked for Cinefex, but they were doing the same thing. It was he was delivering films at the time, so he would deliver films to different movie studios.
So he's already somewhat in the entertainment business, right? And you're watching this growing up. Did that have an effect on you as far as like your aspirations?
Man, you know what? Maybe subconsciously. I don't. I don't know. Honestly, I mean, if I'm gonna count something, I would probably say more my sisters because they used to buy every 45 possible at the time, and I mean, I used to take them and put them on my on my tricycle on the handlebars. I used to fill them all out. Um, I remember riding around the house with my tricycle, filled with 45s on both sides of the handlebars. So, that was more of, where I found a love for music,
Hmm. And what was your mom
and for the
doing? Was she a
entertainment.
stay at home mom?
No, well, yeah, no, she used to clean offices. She used to do maintenance, at night, um, AT&T building. Well, it was the AT&T building at one time, um, over there by Bryant Park.
So from the way that you're describing it, it seems like you grew up in a really cultured household with
Yeah.
music
hmm
and
Yeah, no, yeah, it was yeah, music, it was Spanish cooking. I mean, my mother would cook before going to work because she was working at nights. So we would always have a meal. Uh, before my dad got home. So it was like this little space. My mom leave to work, and then my dad would be home maybe an hour or two after.
as far as like the household, right? Was like your parents just speaking Spanish to you or like were you
Yeah, yeah, that's all they spoke. I mean, even before my dad passed at 88. So even then his English wasn't. It wasn't. He had a heavy accent. He still had a heavy accent. So yeah, it was. I mean, at one point when I was younger, before going to school, Spanish was my first language.
so you're at that early age, right? Besides music, were you into sports or like were you really into school? How would you describe yourself as a child?
Well, I got into. Well, yeah. I mean, I used to love baseball, but it wasn't until we moved to Queens is when I started playing little league and got into sports, and that was more because of a next door neighbor that was that loved baseball. His family was a Dominican family that baseball was their thing. So, and because my dad used to get free tickets from from being in the industry, he'd get like these great box seats at Shea Stadium. So he used to always take me when we used to live in Manhattan, and then when we moved to Queens, I would be able to he just would give me tickets, and I'd take kids from the neighborhood. So I fell in love with baseball. Baseball was my number one thing.
So you're growing up, starting in the 60s into the 70s, and you're like born before the birth of hip hop, right? You got to see
hmm
hip hop really grow. What was that like when you started seeing it take off?
Oh man. So I think the first time I heard anything, it was like in a locker room, in my gym locker room. I'm hearing dudes playing cassette tapes, and at that time it was right the echo chamber, which was like a little 8 track. It looked like like a miniature 8 track, and that would be the repeat because the tape it's just delaying whatever you're saying, right? So it's this little 8 track playing, um, and it's just recording your voice or whatever's next, and it'll just replay it. So when I first heard that, I was amazed. I was I think I had a friend that would come from the Bronx every once in a while, and he'd come to Queens with tapes, whether it be Bambaataa, and I mean, listen, they weren't the best sounding tapes, right? They were copies of copies, but it was all we had. So I was just in awe and wanted to DJ. Um, at 14 years old, I think I brought my first turntable. It was a Pioneer, and then I brought I think it was like one Technique belt drive or something like that. And I remember there was a um, man, what was the name of the record store? She was a famous record store. Anyway, they used to sell mixers. It was on Jamaica Avenue. So I remember putting a deposit on it, and it was layaway plan. I'd go there after every week and give them till I was able to take the mix out.
So prior to you wanting to become a DJ, right? Like, were you going to the park jams? Were you witnessing the graffiti, the breakdancing? Like, how did you end up falling in love with hip hop as far as the whole culture?
Okay, so yeah, I used to see the graffiti. There was a lot of graffiti, right? I think it was more, I mean, they would have park jams here and there. I know that there was a hotel by LaGuardia Airport, small hotel, and I'd see the Disco Twins. They'd play there. Um, they'd have like a couple of little groups come in from the Bronx, and it was small, small venues. First time, then before I even started DJing and getting into it, I remember Eric B. Um, at the time, his brother, which was one of my best friends, and I think you remember him I think you remember Ant Live from Money, the G Rap record, Money in the Bank, Money to the Bank.
Right, right.
Yeah, I forget the correct title. Anyway, but yeah, so we were best friends in the fifth and sixth grade. Um, went to school in East Elmhurst. So they had, as got a little older, they ended, went into junior high, beginning of high school is when I'm really exposed to all of this, right? So they had a crew called the Infinity Crew. So Ant Live was called Gangsta B at the time, and Eric B was Hook, but he wasn't a good DJ. So I mean, he was just kind of part of their crew, which I don't know if he ever was. But anyway, um, so they had their two DJs, which was Philly B and his brother. They were actually half Cuban and French or something like that. They used to always have jams in there. They had a beauty parlor on Junction Boulevard, right, in Corona. So they had a beauty parlor, and they used to throw hooky parties in there. So they'd have they were the first ones with, like, I think they were the 1700s, the Techniques at the time, or 11, something like that. They were one of the first people I seen with like official turntables, right? Like, what we see 1200s became the norm, right? So they would throw these hooky parties, and I mean they had the Serwin Vegas. Their uncle brought them every top of the line piece of equipment you could think of. So that's where I was really. That's the first people like, wow, I want to buy this stuff and I want to DJ myself. So that was like the first, I believe, uh, exposure to all of it.
So would you say that that was the moment that you decided like I want to do this for like the rest of my life? Like, like this is where I want to go?
Um, no, I mean, I just wanted to do it at the time. I wasn't thinking, rest of my life thing. That came later.
So it was just like a
That came
hobby at
later.
first, like something that intrigued you.
Yeah, yeah. This has intrigued me, right? I mean, listen, I get home, right? I get home, drop off my books, and run straight to the basement to DJ.
Wow.
That was the thing. And then I started working in the supermarket when I was 15 years old. I would skip school, play hooky, right, on Fridays to go to downstairs records to go buy records. So I'd go pick up my check, right, have them cash it at the supermarket, go pick up records, come back to go to in time to work at the supermarket.
How much were you making at that time per hour? What was the minimum wage at that time?
Oh my God. I don't even know, man. It could have been like $3, bro.
Yeah, but the living costs matched the wages a lot better back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, no, it did. Yeah, if I was able to go downtown, spend money, it's like buy records. Yeah, and this was a time when downstairs records was really downstairs. It was in the train station. In the train station. And that particular part of the station doesn't even exist anymore. So you go downstairs, they'd have a room full of 45s, right? And then the other room, it would be all 12 inches and albums. And I remember seeing Africa Bambaataa there, by the way, shopping.
You grew up in a time that was so interesting, right? Because like in the 70s is when the Vietnam War ends and a lot of people are suddenly hooked on heroin, and then in the 80s you got the crack era. So during that time it's just like to live through that and witness all those things. What do you remember about kind of like the drug epidemic in New York during that time?
Man, what I remember was, we'd see needles around, like hallways. I remember specifically picking up an envelope. So obviously it was apparent. It was right in front of the school. I picked it up. It was a little yellow envelope. Had spoon in it. It had other, needle, the whole kit. But it was like in a little tiny uh, yellow envelope. And I remember, showing my mother, and she was like, she just snatched it from me and just, don't worry, this is no good. And I mean, and this was walking into kindergarten or first grade at the most.
Wow.
So yeah. So thinking back now that you're asking, that yeah, that was a parent that dropped that.
So prior to
Yeah.
you getting into music, right? Were you like in uh ever like getting into the streets, or you were always like focused on school and music and kind of being on the more straight and narrow path?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, more of the straight narrow path. Like I'd hang around people, right? But it wasn't never. And I guess we could get into that a little later because I know you like you said, you like to do things in order. Um, but just in a nutshell, I've always been around street people, and but I've never been involved in anything, so to speak. You know, it's almost like, hey, and it's just something that not I'm not thinking about it like, oh, I'm gonna stay away, but it was just like, hey, they knew he's not into this. Um, but doing the music, you're around that all the time. Not all the time, but you know what I'm saying. But it was
Right.
more,
You kind of like there's that lifestyle that is surrounding you in a sense.
yeah, it's surrounding you, right? You're not gonna escape it, but it doesn't mean you have to participate. If you get,
Mhm.
what I mean, that makes sense. So yeah, it was more. Listen, I couldn't even when I was in high school and other people were buying turntables. I couldn't fathom the everybody got into cars and they sold their equipment to get cars. I couldn't. I in my head, I couldn't wrap my head around that idea. I was like, how do you sell your equipment to buy a car? I didn't understand it.
Because the music was so important to you.
Yeah, it was so important. I mean, it was every day. I was coming home and practicing. You know, so it was the only thing I was really interested in. Because honestly, with school, I mean, yeah, I do my schoolwork, but it wasn't. I was never into school like that, and that's why I think fast forwarding even to today, I'm a very free, a free thinker. You know, not so much. I think the indoctrination didn't, maybe probably in some things, but in other things later on in life, it's like it's not. Well, not that I ever was married to anything they ever taught me in school, so to speak.
Gotcha. So do you remember the exact moment that you fell in love with hip hop, or was it just kind of like a natural progression over time?
Yeah, it was just a natural progression. It was one step into the other, into the next, into the next. From like I said, from watching the Infinity Crew, um, seeing guys like the Disco Twins around the way. Um, then you start getting into it a little bit. I would see Herbie Azar um, do his thing, right? They had the sheesh, I forget the name of the crew, but Kid and Play was in it, and Turn Up Brothers. So from seeing things like that, and I went to school with her, to high school with her. So honestly, when I saw him with a reel to reel, and this is still in high school, I see him with a reel to reel, ready to give it to Jelly Bean Benitez at the Funhouse. I'm like, what is that? Like, what are you doing? He's like, no, I'm going to give him this thing. It's some music I did. It's like, really? I was like, wow. So, and I believe it was, at the time, um, it was just one of their demos, but, Herbie, Herbie's work. But yeah, that was also an inspiration. That was that was that moment like, wow, look at what he's doing at like 16, 17 years old.
So how did you end up getting the
Yeah.
name the Mighty Vic?
Um, I think that was Riggs and Carlito from the source. I was reading an article when I was working with artifacts, and it said, I think Duro was the engineer, and it said the mighty VIC behind the boards. So they actually gave me that name.
So prior to that, did you just go by VIC?
Yeah, VIC, right?
And then it's an acronym for what?
It's just Vic.
Oh, okay. So but you just stylized it as the
Yeah,
oh,
they just you're right. Yeah,
gotcha.
and then it became the mighty.
Hmm.
Yes. So which I believe it was fashion, Al Tariq
Right.
that that started calling me VIC.
So there's been some controversy over the years, right? Over the creation of hip hop. A little while ago, Fat Joe caused some controversy when he said hip hop was created 50-50 by blacks and Puerto Ricans. From your memory, what did you remember seeing as far as like the audience at the park jams or just like the people that were a part of the creation at that time?
I just see mixed people. The first real experience, like and I'm talking about when Sucker MCs first came out. I mean, I know you're going a little bit into, but that was the first time I went to the Roxy, right? And I saw all cultures. I seen Chinese, I seen Hispanics, I seen black, everything. I saw everything in there, and it was Africa Islam DJ. So I saw Rocksteady Crew in the back. Um, they were like breakdancing and like behind these curtains, kind of like practicing. You saw everything in there. So I don't know where my experience has always been a mixed crowd.
Wow, so you saw not even just Latinos and blacks, but you saw even like Chinese and white people too that were there?
Yes, yes, yes. Yep. And this was a time where you're just not playing hip hop. You're playing hip hop. You're playing what they call punk rock, a new wave. You're playing everything, and people are dancing just the same. People are enjoying them. This is when you were able to play every single genre you could think of. It was a totally different time.
And so, because a lot of
You
times
know.
when they talk about as far as Latino contributions, right, Puerto Rican contributions to hip hop, um, it seems to get minimized in the eyes of a lot of Latinos. I interviewed MC Shan, and he said that, man, roll the clip.
We stole their style because the graffiti artists dressed like me in LL, right? The B-boys who were the Puerto Ricans dressed like the new generation of rap music. So they talking shit. Tell them shut the fuck up. Tell them Shan said shut the fuck up. Because he really don't know what he talking about. Because like he said, they were doing this, but guess what? We stole their style. That's how Puerto Ricans are part of what this hip hop thing is. Because rappers like myself and LL Cool J, how did the breakdancers dress? They dressed in them sweatsuits, them goddamn Pumas and them Adidas. Did they or did they not?
Yeah, they did.
Any rapper that came before Run DMC dressed in all that crazy ass Melly Mel and all that shit with the fucking, I love Mel and them, but we wasn't dressing like them niggas. We don't fucking wear them boots that Mel and them, all the fur fucking collars and all that shit. You know what I'm saying? All the spiky belts and all that rich shit. We wasn't rocking with them like that. And so who do we rock with? We rock with the style that the B-boys was rocking with. That's where the Kangos came from. That's where the sweatsuits came from. That's where the Pumas and the Adidas with the fat laces came from. And so for somebody to try and separate the Puerto Rican and black aspect of hip-hop, you're wrong, son.
And we know that fashion is one of those interchangeable elements within hip hop. What do you think about that?
As far as the fashion, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think he's correct. I mean, everybody was dressing the same to be tell the truth. I mean, with the Kangos, um, whether they were writing, whether they were rapping or whatever it was, everybody in that culture was, the Playboy shoes and the Wallaby, everybody was kind of dressing the same, to be honest.
But
Um,
did you see
you
Did
know,
you
you
see
s-
like
you know,
the Puerto Ricans dominating those elements specifically more like the breakdancing and the graffiti more than the rapping and DJing?
yeah, I think yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, to me, and again, it may be where where you're growing up in. So, Shan is, you're talking about Queensbridge, right? So I'm by Corona, East Elmhurst. I mean, that's a mixture. But honestly, I used to go to a place called USA Roller Rink, and people used to go right after the roller rink and go to the 7 train yards to do graffiti, right? So and everyone breakdancing there, they were people coming from the Bronx. So you had Rocksteady there as well, right? You had a few different crews, and they were mainly Hispanic. To be honest with you, that's who I would see more. breakdancing was the Hispanics. So then if you wanted to go, I mean, into the emceeing, then you're gonna see, yeah, I saw it was more dominated by the blacks, right? But there was still a spring. You still had the Puerto Ricans and other Hispanics in that arena. And then I guess more of the breakdancing, you would, you kind of see the opposite.
Right.
And with the writing, honestly, I saw more Hispanics writing.
And one thing that Shan was saying though is that like because hip hop comes from the Bronx and the Bronx is filled with so many Puerto Ricans, he doesn't see how you could dispute with Joe on that, because of there being so many Puerto Ricans there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, I mean, that goes back to my point is, I guess it's where you're coming up and where you're around most. So when I hear that argument is the dumbest argument I've ever heard. Like seriously, like it just New York alone. You have to know that it's the melting pot, right? And you have all cultures. So it'd be crazy to say, oh, this was created by this culture when you have when you can go back and say, okay, this person sampled, whether it's walk this way, right? And all these samples, where are they coming from? Right? Is you got rock bands, white rock bands, you got Latin music, you have all kind of music being
Mhm.
sampled. Isn't that part of the creation?
Right.
You're borrowing from different places. How can it just be one group of people?
I think
Never.
I think when people talk about this, I think it's kind of a semantics thing because are you talking about contributions over the years or are you talking about the very inception of hip hop? You know what I'm saying?
I'm talking about the very inception. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about, yeah, I mean, you got to look at it as a whole. I look at things as a whole. I can't just point out, oh, well, they started this. Well, that's
Right.
an element. How about this element? How about, where does it come? So everything to me is connected. It's just all connected.
I think sometimes people just look
You
at
could,
it like, oh, when we say hip hop, we mean just rap. Like they're not thinking about
right,
all the other elements of hip hop that played in such a big
right.
part of the culture to get to where it is today.
Yes. No, no, no. I get it. I get it. And a lot of I don't know, to me, a lot of people that participate in that, I don't get involved in that argument. But I see a lot of people that get into that argument. They weren't there. They're younger, or just ignorant to the whole thing. It's like, come on, like you have to expand and say, hey, what makes up what makes this entire culture? Where does it stem from? So there's many moving parts. We can't focus in on one and expect to get the answers.
Yeah, and I have a brother that's from the Bronx, right? He's Puerto Rican, and he told me during that time a lot of Latinos were passing as black because them having some of more the Afro um, characteristics too. Do you
Hmm.
know if you witnessed that
Right.
as well as why that might be? Like people might think that the Puerto Rican contributions they don't acknowledge it as much.
Or as far as mistaking them for their
Right.
identity and saying, "Oh, well, yeah, no, well, you know what, man? I mean, uh, look at guys like uh like Rob. You know, he's Colombian, right? So so I went to school with his brother. They're Colombian. You could easily mistake them for black, right? So then you're thinking, oh, this great DJ um, is black. No, there's Hispanic. And then you go back, to in time, and you think of Mean Machine, right? They want, their record came out on
Right.
Sugar Hill, correct? You know, and okay, so we're going back to that, and it's like, you start looking at them, and like you said, you're gonna mistake them for thinking, oh, it's a black thing. No, it's not. And you have a lot of Afro, what they call Afro
Hmm.
Latino, right? You have a lot of that, and so they're mistaken. That identity is mistaken. But again, I think is the silliest argument, and I honestly, this is the most I've ever spoken about it. Um, just because I just think I just think it's dumb. And like honestly, I think it's the worst argument, and it's people, and it's mostly a lot of times spoken about like people that never even contributed to
I
anything.
think it's the internet a lot too, though. You know what I mean? You're talking about people that are born
Yeah,
in
no,
the
yeah,
last
yeah,
20
no,
years
right,
or something, like, that just feel.
right, and that's why I
Yeah.
say they weren't around. They weren't around. Like when I see profile pictures, unless it's a fake profile picture, when I see profile pictures and somebody commented, and I forgot where I saw it. But I'm looking at the picture. I was like, why are you even bothering? This guy looks like he's, you know, maybe in his early 30s, late 20s, maybe. I don't know. But I'm like, why even bother with this guy? He wasn't around. He wasn't around. All he has is word of mouth. It's tough to, the culture has changed over time, right? Every time, like anything else, some things stays the same, but other things change, right? So if you're not there from the beginning, I've seen it. I've seen it. A lot of times, even when when Raucus had when they would put out, and I forget the name. If you remember, please refresh my memory. Remember when Raucus put out um a few old, it was like old records, and then they had some literature on it. I think Sasha Jenkins was one of the writers for it. Do you remember that?
I can't remember off the top of my head right now. No.
Yeah, so they put something out, and I was reading through it, and I was speaking to Mike Haran, and Mike was like, um, I told him, I said he's incorrect here. I forgot what it was, but I told him he's like, no, listen, he'll, he doesn't think he's 100% correct. He'll take the argument from somebody like you that was around and can correct him. He's not doing it like, hey, this is what it is, and uh, I stand on this, and this is 100% truth. He was like, he'll take that anything is arguable.
Right.
So people like that I respect,
Hmm.
right? You know, so like I was around, I could tell you, hey, no, this doesn't sound right, at least from my eyes and what I've seen. It went a little differently.
So you were a part of the group, the Beatnuts, right? How did you end up meeting Juju and Psycho Les?
All right, so Juju I've known for a long time. Uh, Not as like a close friend or anything, but I knew him. We'd speak every once in a while. So, um,
And you're older than both of them, right?
yeah, what's funny? Yeah, you say that, and it's like, going back to when I would go see Jelly Bean at the Funhouse, I was like, man, he was way younger. I mean, I was young. I was like, dang, so he must have been going there, man, when probably at, I'd say like 13 years old or something, because I remember seeing him there. But anyway, so I had a label called Crazy Noise, and So we're going back to 1991, right? Um, I did a recording with the original Dr. Butcher, right? May he rest in peace. Camille, his name was Camille, and he was the first butcher. He was the one that worked on Men at Work with Marley Marl, and he used to throw ideas at Marley when he was recording with G-Rap. So I put out a record called, it was the group called Smooth Movement, and the record was called The Adventure. And this is when I first got a little studio, like a real studio, at my, and I put it in the basement. Um, and I used to see Juju around, tell him, "Hey, come, I got some equipment. We could do something in my house." And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." He was always coming, never showed up. And then finally, one day he hears the record, right? Because prior to that, I took it to Stretch and Bobito. That's how I met them, right? So I took it to Stretch. Bobito answered the door over there at Columbia at the radio station. They had a packed house, and I guess it was the members of Wu Tang, but they had a lot of people at at the radio station. So this first time I meet Bob, and Bob says, "Hey, I can't let you in. I have a packed house." So I was like, "Okay, no problem." I said, "I just want to drop off this record. I have people waiting for me in my car anyway." So once I get back in the car, I remember they were playing Tribe Called Quest. I made a U-turn, and next thing you know, they threw on the record. He gives me a shout out. He called, the next day we speak. He's like, "Thank you for dropping this by, blah, blah, blah." So now Kid Capri is playing it when he would have his little mix show in the late afternoons, early evening, right on BLS. And Flex started playing it. Juju heard it. He didn't know who it was, and he thought I was just putting out house records, right? So the guy at the record store on Junction in Corona, he's like, "Oh, I think I know what record you're talking about." As he's describing it, and he goes, "No, I know that label. I know that label. Put it away. Put it away." He goes, "That's house music." He goes, "No, this is not house." He says, "I know that label. Stop. I know the guy." And he's like, "But it's not house." He says, "All right, go ahead, play it." And he played. He was like, "Oh my God, that's the record." So he buys two of them. He comes over. He says, "Yo, why you made me buy these records? I brought two of these records. I brought doubles." I said, "I've been telling you to come forever. You could have got them for free." So right from there, that's when we connected. And then I met Les, and then I met Fashion.
So let me make a correction to what I said earlier. You've really been in this game for like 40 years, if not more than that, right?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So at what point do you join the group then?
So it wasn't long after that, that initial connection on that. Yeah. So, man, maybe it was before their record, like they were trying to get a record deal with Relativity, Chris Lighty. And what happened was they wanted we did a couple of demos. And, I told him, "Hey, do you need the demos?" And he was like, "No, no, no, forget it. They gave us the deal regardless." And so as they were signing, Chi Ali's dad, Stan, was the manager. So he told Stan, Juju told Stan, he says, "Hey, I want him to be part of the group, part of the production." So that's how that came about. Juju didn't even have a drum machine at the time. And I was wanting to say,
yeah, you're credited as teaching him how to use the MPC, right?
Yeah, so I got him to buy he got his advancement, and I was like, "Yo, you're gonna buy a machine, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "You think I said, "Yeah." He didn't think. He was like, "You know what? Let's just do it." And he ended up buying a machine, and I showed him how to use it, and you know, I mean, even just from hanging out in the studio. I mean, a lot of the things were done in the beginning at the studio. So even if he had an idea with a record, it'd be done right in the studio. You
Because
know, for example, yeah.
I interviewed Psycho Les, and he said that you guys were hired basically to produce Chia Lee's first album, right? And a lot of those songs were actual demos that the Beatnuts had did, like that you guys wrote and everything. Man, wrote a clip.
And this is the time, around the time where we're Jungle Brothers, you know, we're Jungle Brothers in studio. So he introduces us to Chris Lighty, he was everybody's manager at that time.
Violator.
Yeah, Violator. And Africa's like, yo, I got this project to do this album for Chi Ali, this kid called Chi Ali. He's from the Bronx. But my hands are full. I can't do this shit. So I'm gonna pass that project to the Beatnuts. He told Chris Lighty. So then Beatnuts at that time was doing demos. I mean, you know, with fashion and all that shit. So we went to the studio with Chi Ali, and so all those Beatnuts demos turned out to be new Chi Ali songs. Now we turned those songs into Chi Ali. So
so you guys ghost wrote it too, then?
Yeah. Because we used, you know, so when you hear Chi Ali's album, that all those songs was really Beatnuts demos.
Right. So I came in right after the Chi Ali album.
Got you. Okay.
Right after that's when I came in. You know, I mean, you know, not the remixes, not like a Lemonade remix, because I was already there. But as far as the album, yeah, I wasn't part of that.
But you were part of Intoxicated Demons, the EP, right? And then the album Street Level?
Yeah, from the very beginning.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, from the very beginning, yes.
What do you remember about that time? Like, what stands out to you about that process of doing that EP and that album?
Stands out is the passion that we all had. You know, it was going to the studio, um, you know, late nights, 5:30 in the morning, coming back on the 7 train, um, with Juju's machine in a calzone case, huge. I mean, those things would weigh like about 60 pounds with the case. Um, we started the recordings there, right? So, well, World's Famous was recorded there. Um, and you know, well, quite almost, I'd say almost half the album was recorded there. But then there was a lot of joking around because of the engineer. He was a good friend, good guy. It's just that work wasn't, you know, after a while, not enough work was being done, right? So, you know, you had songs come together. You know, I think World's Famous came together, you know, nicely, but that was like, you know, a chop that Juju did, right? And, you know, like that's what we recorded in one night. Okay, great drum track, but man, you know, we were there for hours. More stuff could have been done, should have been done. So it's things like that, you know, and then we come back the next day, he starts playing the Dizzy Gillespie. And I was like, man, that loop right there would go perfect with the drums you chopped the other night. He's like, you think so? I said, yeah. So we put it up, boom, like a glove. So, you know, I think a short while after that, we started working on Pete Nice's album. And I met Rich Keller, and Rich Keller had a studio out in New Jersey, in Fort Lee. So I said, listen, not much is getting done here. It's a lot of ideas, but nothing concrete, right? Except for a few songs, whatever. And so we, you know, I would take the responsibility of just picking them up and drive it, and we would all drive to New Jersey, to Rich Keller's, and long sessions, and things were getting done there. That's one thing. It was getting done. But listen, it was one of the best times. It was just creative. You didn't think about. Nobody was thinking about. Oh, we got to make this money, and we have to do this, and we have to do that. It
It
was
was more
just,
innocent at that time.
yeah, it was innocent. It was like, man, we just want to do this music, you know. Um, Although, I'll be totally honest here, you had people in the background. Um, it didn't have to end at street level, to be honest, and I'm gonna tell you why. Um, and we'll get to that part in the part that where I departed later. But so when we're working on that album, knowing it or not knowing it, I was actually acting as the A&R, right? So I'm doing somebody else's job at the time, right? And I think he felt threatened because there was no need for him, right?
The A&R?
The A&R, yes,
Right.
because I'm picking them up, right? Um, we're doing programming. It's just nothing for him to really do except book the studio, even the studio time. Hey, we'll be by here. Excuse me. So the only thing is he's probably getting the bills paid. That's it. Um, so when it came time to mix, um, all of a sudden, they're doing it in Chungking, and I'm like, wait a minute, like what just happened? Like I'm not in most of these mixes. So Juju ends up telling me, hey, Peter Peter doesn't want, not that he doesn't want, he's putting it in our ear that you joke around too much, and that we don't need you um there because you're a disturbance. I'm like, oh, that's weird because he came over my house and told me I don't need you guys because look at all this record and equipment I have. That's
Wow.
strange, right? So yeah, so he tried to cause that division. Um, so it what nobody ever brought it up, but it was that's what was said on both sides. You know, so
So did that ultimately lead to you leaving then?
not there, not there. So it like that wasn't going to break us up, right? That wasn't going to do it. Honestly, I looked at them as my brothers, especially Juju. Like I it's I knew his mother well. Like that's family to this day. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to see him. I'll text him. We'll go texting each other every day for weeks, and then I don't hear from him. And then we go back to speak. So that's forever my brother,
You guys
no
pick up where
matter
you
what.
left off, even if there's a long gap.
Yes, yes, yep. Even if it's a long gap, always sending each other music. Hey, how about this? We have our little inside jokes and whatever. You know, have our disagreements. That's how it works, right? But yeah. So it didn't happen till the end of Street Level. Then that's when it started. You know, because even in the next album after that, I was helping them out, just mix some stuff in Juju's house, but then they ended up doing the mixes on the SSL. But it started happening on street level. So, street level was right back to business, like as if that other little thing didn't take place with the A&R.
So what happened on street level that led to you guys feeling like you guys needed to separate? Because Al Tariq Fashion, he ended up leaving after that album too, right?
Yeah, he left. So what ended up happening was, remember Lucian from the Luck of Lucian
Yes.
tribe? Yes. Okay, so he used to hang around us as well. So one day, midway through this album or almost ending, he tells me, um, he says, watch it for Fashion at the time. He said that guy is saying that you're using them so that you can get a name and then leave. You just use them for their name and so that you can get work. I was like, what? So I was like, so he says, just watch it with him. All right. I kind of felt something. Maybe somebody else was putting something in his ear or whatever. Listen, we speak now and we've spoken about little things, and everything is fine. But at the time, there was friction. I felt it. I see eyes roll, and I'm like, what's going on here? So it was nothing that Juju arrested. It's just I'm not going to sit in a room and feel uncomfortable, right? Um, so what happened was I stopped going, and they were almost at the end. They just needed like couple more songs, whatever it was. I think it was right after we did the song with Grand Puba, the Are You Ready?
Right.
It was a little bit after that. So I stopped going, and then Rickman, which was the road manager at the time, and Troy Hightower was the engineer, for all the sessions. I get a call, and then I see Troy, and he's like, "You got to come back. You got to come back." And then Rickman's calling me, says, "You got to come back." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because all they're doing is smoking and drinking and playing records. They're not getting anything done." So then we go back to the A&R. You know, not that they had to be babysat. You know what I'm saying? But it was still, no matter what, it's a somebody has to have put things in order, right? Or somewhat.
Well, everybody has their role, right?
So
Everybody has their strengths, and like you
yeah,
guys are like a puzzle. You fit,
hmm
yeah.
yeah, right, exactly. So I, I went back. I said, damn, at first I said, no, I'm not going. He says, you have to, man, at least these last songs, because they're not doing anything. So, I'd go back. It didn't feel the same. And again, not because it lessens you, um, but yeah, so that album was finished and it was mastered, and that's when, the real departing started, you know. And then Juju and Fash had friction, and the thing was totally dead by the next one.
Do you have any regrets about how that situation unfolded?
Yeah, I do. I think rather than leaving the situation, and I don't want to put blame on anybody, I think I should have just stood up and said, and hashed it out right there and then, or called some type of meeting. Because at the time, honestly, I felt like, I think, especially Juju, right? Because to me, the guy's super intelligent, right? Um, he, I think he could have, and I'm not saying come to my defense. I'm trying to find the right words, but I think he could have said, "Hey, you know what?" Because honestly, he was the true leader of that group, right? Or of the whole situation. I think he could have spoke up and more hashed it out, right? And say, "Hey, man, we should do, this is what should be happening." I felt that way. I felt, but then I felt like I should have spoke up, but I didn't want it. It's comes to a situation where you don't want to step on anybody's toes, right? Because it's not your name that's signed on those contracts. You understand? We had a separate production company which fizzled out, right? But we had contracts signed as a production, right? And that just kind of went to the wayside. But I felt like something had to happen, some type of meeting had to take place, and I should have just spoken to Juju and then have him, hey man, if we're gonna move forward, X, Y, and Z needs to be addressed, and we need to
So
fix
instead of
this.
letting it just fester inside and everything,
Yeah,
you think that you guys should have just laid it all out there on the table so that there was no confusion or anything. Everybody got to speak their piece.
right. Everybody gets to speak their piece, and and if it was gonna be water under the bridge, then it's water under the bridge. Let's start new. Leave all that other stuff behind.
So were the issues, I guess, the confusion between you and Fashion, or like with you and Les?
No, no, it wasn't with me and Les. Not at all. Les, he don't say much, or he didn't say much. But it was more. I think it was more me and Fashion, to be honest. I think it was, there was a conflict there, and he felt one way. He felt like, hey, I'm just using them for thing, and not to say that he wasn't putting it in anyone's head, you know, because you say things, you keep on repeating things and saying things enough, it becomes the truth, right?
Right.
You can manipulate anybody by saying things enough time. Be like, nah, nah. I'm like, damn, wait a minute, yeah. So
The vibe was off
yeah,
and it didn't feel right to you anymore for that
yeah,
situation.
it didn't feel right to me. I have to feel good in a situation. It's not about, you know, yes, it's about making money, right? Because you have to make a living. But to me, first and foremost, it's about art. You know,
Right, because when you're talking about being creative, like that type of stuff will affect the music,
yeah,
the art,
the art, yeah,
easily.
yeah, easily. So you have to be careful, and you can't let things like that consume you because it's just you're there just to be there, and and what you're doing is sacrificing your creativity. You're not going to be able to bloom.
So did you have a conversation with them that was like, yeah, I'm leaving?
No, it just kind of took place. It just took place. It just fizzled out little by little. I
And
was still
everybody
work.
understood.
Yeah, I was still working with Juju
Mhm.
because we were doing the stuff with Raucus. So it was just, you know, it was just the Beatnut stuff that I would be and then well, actually, when fashion was done, I'd go around. Wasn't like I wasn't, but it was already kind of established that I'm not really part of this anymore. as heavy
Right.
as the the two prior records.
So how do you end up meeting Fat Joe and working with him? Because the Beatnuts produced the song "The Shit Is Real" off the debut album "Represent," right? Were you a part of that?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I did that in my basement. Actually, the beat. Um, so yeah, so Joe, um, we met him when uh, the Flojo. I believe Diamond D did that. Um, so the A&R at Relativity at the time didn't like the mix. He felt it could have been better, so um, we went into the B room of the old power play, and we did the mix there. So so that at that time, that was around the time I met Joe, Fat Joe.
And that was Fat Joe the Gangsta at that time,
Yes.
which
Yep.
is crazy. 31 years now from that album, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So what was the session like for that song?
I mean, everything was there already, so it wasn't like we're just mixing. I just remember mixing the
For "The
record.
Shit Is Real" or for
No,
the
no,
other song?
no, the Flow Joe. I thought you were talking Flow. That's when I
Yeah.
first met Joe. The
Right.
Shit Is Real. Oh, that was that. I mean, actually, Kid from Kid and Play came up with that. Down on the reel to reel, putting the Large Professor thing in, which when Premiere did the remix, he ended up scratching it in differently. But you know, that was Kid's idea, which is funny. But yeah, I mean, I mean, I remember that session vaguely. I remember him coming up with the reel to reel thing, the Large Professor sample. But I don't remember much about that session, to be honest. I remember him doing
Yeah, because when
vocals.
I interviewed Psycho Les and I asked him about it, he said he was having a hard time remembering that session too. Man, roll a clip. And you guys ended up producing on his debut album "Represent" on the song "The Shit Is Real," which the beat is ridiculous too. Can you talk about what that studio session was like?
I mean, I don't even think he was there because we was doing a lot of remixes for so the remixes you don't have to be there. The vocals was there, but
Oh, he already had the vocals recorded,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you guys added the beat.
yeah. He already It was like
Wow.
it was some remix shit that we was doing.
That's crazy. So like, did he have recorded that to another beat first?
Yeah.
Or how did that work?
What song was this that you talking about?
The Shit Is Real.
The Shit Is Real. Yeah. I forgot what beat was that. Trying to remember. I'm not sure if it was a
Off the
remix that we
first.
did or if it was the original one that we did. But yeah, I don't even remember him being in the studio.
It felt like.
All I remember, man, for all I know, Joe could have done the vocals separate.
That's what
Honestly.
that's what he said. He said that the vocals were already there.
Yeah, I think he did it separately, man. That's why I'm not remembering. I'm just remembering putting it together, the hook, and the mix. I'm not remembering Joe doing the lyrics, man. I'm gonna be honest.
Do you remember your first impression of Joe when you met him for Flojo?
Yeah, I mean, it was quiet, like it wasn't, when I met Joe, it wasn't like he's, you know, uh, this talker. Um, it wasn't anything that stood out. Um, as far as like,
So
oh,
when
this.
he met you, he didn't say, Fat Joe's back in town.
Nah, it was never. Yeah, I mean, the Joe you know, that I know is a little different uh from the interviews, you know, you've had in the past or stories you've maybe heard, you know.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, to me, it was more, you know, like a business joke. That's it, you know. It was never, you know, anything, you know, this street thug or anything like that. It was never. Um, you know, again, it may have been, you know, it's just a different joke. You know, someone told me, you know, when I was doing the project for Warner Brothers, I was going to ask them to be on it or whatever, and someone said, "Well, it depends which Joe you get." I was like, "Oh, okay," you know. But I mean, I've been in, you know, listen, when we did even the songs with Pun, um, you know, Joe, you know, the most I've seen Joe, you know, tell me like, hey, you know, like, uh, he would come in the room sometimes and be like, man, you always take long. That's one thing I do remember, you know, Joe saying, you know, was like, you know, it's like, well, you know, I want to get it perfect. He goes, all right, you know, he'd be a little impatient, but I never remember anything about Joe, you know, in sessions like that was anything crazy that stands out.
Hmm.
You
Got
know,
you.
I mean,
So
I've
you
seen
didn't have
people get
like
in his
a.
face. I've seen that and was
You've seen
surprised.
what?
People kind of get in his face, like speak to him in a way that I was like, kind, you know, and I'm standing right there, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe this person is speaking like I, you know, at the time I didn't know what's going on, but as I'm seeing your some of your interviews,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of answers some of my questions. You know, there was some animosity there, but you
Wow.
know, yeah, you know, I was like, oh, you know, what's happening here? You know, where you know I've seen people jump out at him.
So you produced on Big Pun's debut album, Capital Punishment, for the song Boomerang, right? Can you tell us about meeting Big Pun and what that relationship was like?
Yeah, so Big Pun, uh, Joe, Joe asked us if we had some beats to play for one of his new artists. He had somebody he wanted to get signed. Um, so he comes into the studio with Pun. I mean, he came in with a few guys, right? So I didn't know who Pun was. Next thing you know, I'm playing the beats and I'm still looking around like, who's the MC? Who is the person that he wants his beats for? Then I hear, you know, I see one of the guys speaking to him. I said, that cannot be the guy. You know, he's kind of whispering to him, like, yeah, that's the one. And so Joe says, hey, can you play that one, that other one again? I play it again. And he looks at it. I said, wow, this is the guy that's going to rhyme. I was like, wow, you know, I would have never thought, right? So when I heard
Was
him,
he's like what 350 at the time?
yeah, he was huge, huge. I just didn't think that he just didn't look like the type. You know, I don't know what the type looks like, right? So, but in my mind, I'm picturing somebody different, right? And you know, so I hear him rhyme in Miami freestyle, and I'm like, holy snap, this guy's good, man. I was so impressed. I was like, wow, I can't wait to do this record. Um, so I mean, when he did that, he did a lot of punches. He did do a lot of punching in, but you could never tell. You could never tell. So,
Oh, so at that time he was already doing the punching in, but it wasn't after every line, was it?
no, it wasn't after every line yet.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so. I don't remember him punching in like every, but there was quite a few punch-ins where he's, you know, rhyming the way he rhymed, and I was like, man, you know, you gotta be, you know, nice with the punch-ins because to catch it. But everything was tight. You couldn't tell at all. Um, you know, so he did that song with, of course, with Armageddon. Um, only thing, you know, it was weird. The only thing I regret from that is I wish I would have spoke to him a little more about the song structure. because being that it was a 6-bar loop, they were treating it like 8 and 16s, right? So it falls on the correct spot on the first, and then the second chorus, it comes in a little bit after what's supposed to be there. So, I never made the corrections. I left it the way it was. Surprisingly enough, I read in some magazine, actually Loud produced a magazine. They had a magazine.
Right.
They published a magazine. I mean, I don't know how many volumes they had, but it was something that he said on, I don't know if it was MTV or it had something to do with MTV. I don't know if they had a publication at the time, but it was taken from an article, and he said that Boomerang was his favorite song, that it meant the most to him out of any record he's ever done. He says, yeah, it's not my single, but it is, my favorite because of what I'm talking about, and it means so much to me. So I was like, wow, that, to me, that was impressive. So.
What was your initial reaction when he did rhyme? Because you were like confused that he was the rapper.
What was my reaction? You said,
Yeah.
no, I was in awe, man. I really couldn't believe it. So now, obviously, when you doubt something, right? Sometimes you're like, oh shit, like now like for you to be totally impressed, man, that person has to really be good because you were just convinced that that wasn't the guy,
Right.
right? So when you heard him, you're like, oh wow, wait a minute, So man, to me, I think he's one of the best ever, one of the best ever. I mean, he was just taken away too early, but his career was cut short, his life was cut short, right? But to me, there's nobody like him, man. He had so much personality. Like it just in the songs themselves, he jumped out at you, and you almost felt like, hey, man. Even I think if I would have never even met him and hear those songs, it's like, hey, man, I know this guy. It's like one of those personalities.
Right. He was very captivating.
Yes. No, he was.
For that song though, do you remember if he wrote his lyrics really fast, or like how was the process, his creative process?
Man, I don't remember him writing in the studio. I just remember him. I just remember him in the booth and kind of knocking it out quickly. You know, um, him and Armageddon. So I think I took longer than them putting everything together because I had other sounds, and I thought it was so good that it's like, you know, I remember even taking the beat a step further and like really dissecting every little sound and putting anything I could in there. Where even Maddie was like, "Oh my God, I never heard that part in the beat when you gave it to him. I didn't even know it has that." And in my mind, I was like, "Yeah, because I'm putting it in there now. That's why. That's why." Or and in other pieces bringing it out. That's So he made me want to work harder. Um, on that song.
Right.
Like I was like, wow, he delivered. I need to deliver.
So did you guys have a close relationship, like besides like the working relationship?
Yeah, what's so funny? One thing I do remember now that was came to mind was the when he picked "The Shit Is Real." He came to my house, to my mother's house in East Elmhurst. I remember him coming to the basement. We played some beats for him. He picked that. Um, I mean, listen, I've had conversations with him. It wasn't just, the times in the studio. Uh, I've had conversations with him quite a few times, but, again, it's always been everything civil. The only thing, uh, Well, I remember Joe. I had a song. So I remember, being in a disagreement with him. Was I had a song I did with Seis, Prospect, and Armageddon. It was for a project I was doing, and then G Rap. We put G Rap on it, but he was on a totally different beat. So it goes in from their song into his, but it's still the same song. Um, and Seis did the hook. So I get a call from the people at the time. They were doing the movie The Boiler Room, right? Um, and the guy was like, "I have some songs that you did that you sent me." Um, he goes, I'm doing the editing right now. This is the producer of the movie, and he's saying, "I want this Terror Squad song." And I was like, "Oh man." But you got to tell me now. I said, "When do they get paid?" He goes, "But I won't be able to pay till February." And we're talking about we were like in September. And I remember being in front of Pun's house, and everybody was out there. And I went up to Joe and I said, "Hey, I just got a call about putting this song in Boiler Room." And he said, "Well, are they going to?" He says they want to put it in now. I said, "Yeah, he wants to put it in now." He goes, "Well, I want to check now." I said, "They're not going to pay out till February." He goes, "No, so then they can have the song in February." And I was like, "Wow." So, you know, and then, I remember Sace being upset. He was like, "I told you, I knew it. I knew it. This guy ruins everything." I was like, "Wow, that's the first time I ever.
Say said that to you?
Yeah, Sace said that. He says, "I knew he was going to do that. I knew he was going to do that."
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. Because he says he's going to say no. He's going to say no. I said, "No, he's not going to say no. Why would he say no to a movie? I mean, you guys are going to get paid." And Sace was 100% right. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. I was like, really? Like, it's a song from an album I did, you know, from a project that I was working on. Like, why would,
So were you upset
I
that you couldn't put it in either? Because that means that you weren't getting a check from that then.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so, I had to get the clearance from him to get it on there. I mean, it was one thing for my project, but then that's another, right? So, you know, it didn't happen. And it's funny because that same project, they wanted they wanted other they wanted other songs from my from that same record for Training Day, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that didn't happen either. So it's you get a lot of blocking. That's why it's always great to do your own thing. This way, it's totally independent. I don't need to ask. Just move
Right.
forward. Yeah.
Did you guys end up building a relationship after that?
Um. It's so funny. I mean, I hung out with him a few times. The relationship wasn't as deep. I know Juju's relationship was much deeper than uh, out of any one of us, with him. I mean, I remember going to his house in the Bronx, um, and I forget. I think it was more like Castle Hills part, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but I remember going to his apartment and bringing him for after Boomerang, and I wanted to work on. I think he was working on the second record, and I brought him a cassette tape, and next thing you know, I said, "Hey, did you find anything on there?" And he was like, "No, but I want Joe to rhyme on the last beat you put on there." I said, "The last beat." I said, "Damn." I said, "Oh." He goes, yeah, I want Joe to rhyme on that. I was like, man, I almost didn't put that beat on there. I was like, one of those things where I said, I'll throw it on there, but I'll leave it at the last one. And that ended up being Misery Needs Company.
See, you're too smart, man. That was literally going to be my next question. So you ended up producing Misery Needs Company off of Joe's third album, Don Cartagena, right? The song featured Nori.
Yes.
And wasn't it produced by Beatnuts and Ghetto Pros together?
Ghetto Pros. Yeah, I mean, I just put the name on it. It was me. I mean, Juju came with me to mix it. Because we've always supported each other in the studio. So whether it was his song, my song, I'd hope like I'd go. Um, he'd always want me to direct the engineer. So I would always tell him, come. What do you think I can throw into a song, whatever. So, but no, but in reality, I did the beat, and I remember mixing it in Staten Island. But Nori's vocals were already there.
Hmm.
I wasn't in the studio. In fact, Joe told me I got Nori on it, blah blah blah, and and that was another time where he was like, "Oh, come on, you always take long." I'm like, "Yeah, because I want to throw sound effects. I just don't want to just that whole thing with the cop, with the sirens and all that. That happened the day of. Even the bass line happened the day of.
So you weren't there when they recorded the song, but you were like, you did the production at
No,
like the. He's looking at
I
it
did.
from.
Yeah, I gave.
He's looking at it more from like, okay, you're a beat maker, but you're looking at it from more of you're a producer, like you're producing the entire song to like really give the full round picture,
Right. Yes. Yeah, right. So the beat is laid down, your vocals are laid down, you guys are done. My job isn't. I wanted to sound full. I wanted to keep, it's a slow, I want to keep it moving. It's not like a 1 minute, a minute and a half. No, I wanted to keep on moving. So exactly. I'm looking at it as a production. It has to be a full production.
right? And so Ghetto Pros, right? What did that was just you, or who else was in that?
So Ghetto Pros was me. It was me, Juju, and Mike Karan.
Okay, got you.
So I don't know if you ever heard any of the songs that I did, that we did, the artifacts. So we called them the Brick City Kids.
Right.
I don't know if you heard any of those songs. So we had a small little we had a label that was under Raucous. Um, when you get a chance, uh, Google on YouTube Brick City Kids. Two songs should come up, and that was actually the Artifacts. But because they were signed to Atlantic, we had to name it the Brick City Kids. Although their A&R was fine with it, which was Daddy Reef at the time.
And you were also a part of Groove Merchants, right?
Yes,
So what did that encompass?
that was me and Godfather Don. So it's almost what we were doing was almost like what jazz bands did, right? Where you would have you know three members, three individuals that jazz players. They had one group, and then they would have another group. So that's what that whole Groove Merchant thing was. It was like, let's just form a little, when we're producing together, this is what it is, right? And then when Ghetto Pros was thing, that was something else. If it makes sense. So Groove Merchants, we did some of the bass blaster stuff. I don't know if you ever heard it. Um, it was when Steve Stout and Kid had a label under under RCA, and they had Bass Blaster from the Gangstar fame.
Because you ended up also you guys ended up producing for what? House of Pain, Curious George, Lord Finesse, right?
Yeah, that was a remix. Yes, that was right. So okay, so that Lord Finesse song was with Bass Blaster. That was Lord Finesse, Fat Joe, Juju, Don, and Bass Blaster. That was off the the James Brown sample. So that I remember that session I remember clearly. I remember Juju writing with Joe for that
What do you
one.
mean? He wrote his lyrics?
His verse, Joe's verse. Yes, I don't know if he wrote the complete thing, but I know he had he had a big hand in Joe's verse.
Because I've heard other rumors of
And I
people
could
saying that Juju used to write for Joe. So I've heard that too.
oh yeah, I mean I know he wrote that. That he totally again I don't know if Joe had little lines here and there, but without even knowing what they were doing in the booth, while they were writing, I could already tell you what what lines are definitely Juju's, because I knew how he wrote. So but yeah, I don't know. Outside of that, I don't know. Juju ended up writing. That I know that other record when we go if you want fast forward into the Brave in the Heart, I know Prospect uh, was one of the writers for Joe.
Wait, you skipping ahead because that was my next question
for that song. I know. No, I don't want to skip ahead. I knew. Yeah, no, I know. I'm trying to stay in order. But and I'm trust me, I'm doing my best. But I jump around.
You guys also produced One Love, right, for Nas, like the remix version?
Yes, yes, with Sadat X. So Kid from Kid and Play wrote that chorus.
Wow.
Yeah. He's really talented, I mean, he did whatever Kid and Play stuff, but he could write,
yeah, because I feel like
good.
people clown him for that now. People clown him for that, for that now. But like, I feel like he is really talented, and people don't give him his credit.
Yeah, no, he is talented. He's very talented, man. I just, there's another record that he participated in the chorus. I mean, he's really good with choruses. But yeah, he wrote that. I remember we recorded that at Green Street. Well, Green Street and I think it was D&D was the first session. Trying to fly in Nas's vocals, which wasn't easy because when I heard the original beat, the One Love beat, you could hear that it's off. You could never tell when everything's in. But when you hear everything naked, like just the drums with no EQs, no nothing, it sounds off. So, but yeah, so it's almost with flying in his vocals, I had to speed it up, slow it down in real time on the sampler.
Wow.
So I had to turn the knob. Yeah.
So you had brought up producing Brave in the Heart. That was for the Terror Squad album, the first one, right? And it was Pun, Seis, Joe, and Prospect that was on that one.
Yeah, no, that was that. No, so no, for the Terror Squad album, I did War for Seis.
Oh, was Brave in the Heart not off the first Terror Squad album? What was that one off of?
No, that was the Endangered Species album.
Right, that's right. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, that's the Endangered Species.
So then, what was that studio session like?
Which one? The Terror Squad one, the War,
or Brave in the Heart?
Brave in the Heart. Okay, so Brave in the Heart.
Sorry, I wrote Terror Squad.
Okay. So
But I meant the group. Yeah. right. Because, yeah.
right. So yeah. So I mean, Terror Squad ended up being right. If it was Pun's song to
Mm-hmm.
begin with, right? So now we're going back to before Pun blew up. I recorded that verse with him.
Oh, so that song's old.
Yeah, that song is older. Yeah, this is before he blew. Um, he recorded that in Queens at a studio called Hydra. We had Hydra Records, which put out Screwball. You know, they did records with a lot of people from Queensbridge. Everybody from Queensbridge, whether it be Mobb Deep, uh, what's his name? Whether it was Capone, um, anybody, you know, Nature, anyone you can name from Queensbridge, right? Mega, right? So,
Yeah, I think in my interview with Les, he brought up Hydra. And he
oh
said
yeah,
that
yeah,
like that was the spot where a lot of people would come.
yeah. Everybody would go there. Yes, that was the first. You see the lo-fi that you hear nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first lo-fi uh, um, label.
Wow.
The first lo-fi records. Yeah, the first lo-fi record label. You know, everybody. You know, they had recordings from me, Juju, Les, Godfather Don. Yeah. So that was actually the first one, to be honest. What they're doing now, those '90s sounding beats.
So what do you remember about
Yeah.
that session?
But okay, so Pun came in. He came to, it was in Long Island City. He came, recorded the vocals there. The beat came about because I gave Seis um a cassette, and they were doing something with BT, I believe. So when they were on their way out there to do the BT, I guess it was 106 Park, whatever. So while they were going out there to do the show, he said Pun played that beat from when they left, well, from when he first, because they were playing the beats, and from once that beat hit, he said he played it all the whole trip. Rewind it, rewind it, rewind it. So he wrote to it right there and then. And he says that Pun just kept on rapping to it. And he said that's it. Once that beat came on, he didn't want to hear anything else.
Wow.
We rewound that thing a gazillion times. So I was like, okay. So he says he wants to record it. So that's when him and Seis came, and we recorded it. We started it there. It wasn't supposed to be on Pun's album, right? So I mean, it was supposed to be on Hydra. You know, then the guy from Hydra wants a clearance on paper. I told, you know, I asked Maddie, the A&R. He said, "Don't worry about it. Just do it. Just make sure it doesn't come out with his single. So if you want, just wait on it, and you can, you know, put it out later, or you can do it now. But just make sure it doesn't come out at the same time. That's all. So I don't want to confuse anybody, right? But it's a street song, right? So I don't think there was going to be any conflict. If anything, it could have just helped. But anyhow, it didn't that wasn't the point. And I said, hey, listen, the A&R's telling me, and the lawyer saying, don't worry, go, just do it. I said, oh, he wants paperwork. No, man, we don't need no paperwork. Don't worry, nobody's coming after anybody, man. It's going to be a 12-inch independent thing. No one's coming after it. And you know, and so it was just shelved. You know, Joe calls me, hey, what's up? You know, your boy just called me. Pun needed that money, but now Pun doesn't need it. Tell your boy not to put it out. I was like, all right. So, you know, he says, why is he calling me on a Sunday?
Why would he do that? That makes
Yeah, because the guy wanted the thing, and so he wasn't giving Pun the money, and Pun needed the you know, there was a couple of grand, and so Pun didn't give him he didn't get, he didn't get the check to him. So I guess the frustration settled in, and Joe called me on a Sunday and said, "Listen, your boy just calling me on a Sunday. He goes, first of all, he called me on a Sunday. Why is he doing that? And let him know that Pun does not need um does not need the money anymore. Forget about it. Don't use it. Tell him not to use it." So, it was shelved, and
But wait, before you continue though, that's just so weird because the work's already done. So why would you just shelve it though?
yeah, I mean, it wasn't totally. I mean, it was just him and Seis at the time. But I don't know. You know how it is. It's
Politics
the
stuff.
pride thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the politics. You know, and hold on, let me shut this phone off. I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it's just a pride thing, man. The politics. That's the one thing. I could do without. Everything becomes petty,
Right.
right? Um, but anyway, so it's shelved, and then years later, when Pun passes, Joe calls me. He says, "Do you still have that song that you did with Pun?" I'm like, "Yeah, I still have it." I said, "I can get it, sitting in that studio, sitting up in Hydra." So he says, "Yeah, can we use it? I want to use it." So, I had Theo was the lawyer, right, at the time, and so I tell him, "Hey, what should I charge for this?" Or, I want to try and get Sace paid as well. He's calling me, say, "Hey, see if you can get me paid." And, so, um, Theo went back and forth, I guess, with their lawyer. And he's like, "Listen, get your money. It's you're doing the honorable thing, but it's not your responsibility to get anyone else paid. That's your song. That's your music. You can get whatever you want." So I gave Joe a price, which in Theo's eyes, it was, he says, "You're giving him a break." I said, "Oh, I thought it was sufficient, and next thing you know, when I tell Joe the price, he wants it for free. He's like, "Oh man, come on, this person, you know, he named big producer. I don't know if it was Premier and a couple other guys. This person's doing it for free. That person." I was like, "Yeah, those producers can give you, you know what I'm saying? They can afford to give it to you for free. Like, come on, you know." But that's the whole game. The whole politic game. You know, this person says, "I don't have this." Next thing you know, your lawyer's saying, "Well, I know firsthand that they have that." You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah. So um, anyways, we ended up settling, and we went in, did the session, and that's when you know Prospect got on, Joe got on. It was originally supposed to be Remy.
Hmm.
I wasn't at the studio, but one of the A&Rs told me, "Hey, listen, we're not going to do the Remy thing." I said, "Oh no." I said, he goes, "No, she started bugging out. She was like, 'Oh, this beat is,' in her rhyme, she's saying, 'Oh, this beat is whack, but I'm doing it for my nigga Pun, blah 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 blah.'" And they were like, "Whoa, whoa, wait a minute, you can't do that." That even, I heard Joe stopped her and said, "No, no, no, you can't do this."
Why would you even do that? That's just so weird. What the hell?
Bro, she's done that. I don't know if Les in his interview told you
Wait, okay, wait.
anything
Can we save
about
that
her.
for after we finish this part of this story?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no problem,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay.
So Yeah, so no, and it was funny because so she was originally supposed to be on the song, and then funny thing is I was at some party and I saw Pun's wife, Liza, um and actually they were with Remy Ma and with Angie Martinez and I think Joe's wife at the time, and they came up to me like, "Oh, hey, hey, I'm so sorry, about what happened with her." I said, "No, no problem. That's her opinion. She's allowed to have her opinion." And the funny thing was, she's standing there, but I'm like, I'm not making the connection that that was Remy Ma, and I was like, "Oh shit, wait a minute, that's her," you know. So, but and that's why they were talking so low and they're kind of in my ear, they're like, "Hey, I'm sorry for what happened," you know. I was like, "No, it's not an issue, man.
Hmm.
Everybody has a right." She didn't like it, she didn't like it. Although it was odd
Right, right.
for her to put it in a rhyme. You know what I'm saying? That was the dumb part. Like, okay. Anyway. But yes.
So then you said that Joe and Prospect got on it, but you saw Prospect helping Joe with the rhymes for this specific song?
Yes. Yeah. hmm And yeah, so that, they laid down their parts. Yeah, so it was Seis, Prospect, Joe, right, and then Punk, right. Um,
Do you know if he wrote the whole thing or he just wrote like some of them?
hmm, I don't know. I mean, when you're looking at it from afar and you see the writing and the talking back and forth, I don't know. What does that tell you? He could be writing it and could just be getting confirmation like, hey, you like this part? Or you can say this part like this. Or he could be telling him, hey, I want to put this or that. I don't know. You could be working together, but you already know who's orchestrating it just by
Right.
the body language. So, it was definitely Prospect was taking
Hmm.
the lead on it. But, it could have been, the co-writing. I don't know. Again, I'm watching them from afar, but it looks like Prospect is kind of, hey, let's do it like this, and then Joe I guess cleaning it up. And to me, I guess in hip hop, right, it's a little different, right? You don't, if you're not writing all your rhymes, although I think in any kind of art, especially when you're working together, it's always a team effort, or it should be, or it's not always, it's not always one individual because sometimes you can even write your rhymes, but it's like, hey, why don't you say it like this?
Right, but the
Or
way that
say
you're
this like
talking
that.
about is kind of like how the producer's job is like, hey, don't, the
Right.
little adjustments and everything, right? But like when somebody writes
Right.
an entire verse or the majority or something, I think it's more how the artist carries himself. If you're carrying yourself like I'm an artist versus I'm an MC, because when you're an MC, it's like no, like you're really about the lyrics. You know what I mean? Like it's like a little different level of pride. I feel like that comes with that.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yes. No, it is. And it is. And because of the genre of music, it is, yeah, it's kind of a thing where you should probably be holding your own. I mean, nowadays it's like whatever, but um, and everybody's always had their little secret ghostwriters, right?
Right.
But yeah, but again, again, I don't know what lines Joe actually did on it, but when you see the pen in someone's hand and paper, you already know who has the reins.
So you were talking about the Remy Ma and Psycho Les story.
hmm
So what happened with that situation?
Oh, okay. So, um, I wasn't surprised at what she did on like saying the beat was whack on whatever. I'm doing it for my nigga pun whatever line she said, and I wish they would have kept it. I would have wanted to hear it, but I know Les went and played beats one time, and one of the A&Rs had Loud was like, that as he's playing it, Remy Ma's like, putting faces like, oh, next, next. And then on one of them, she's like, whack, whack, whack. And I heard Joe didn't know where to put his face. Joe was like, oh my God. And when he left, I think he just popped out his thing, was like, I'm gone, I'm out of here. And, that Joe says, you can't do that. These are people I know. These are people I deal with. Like, what is wrong with you? You can't be doing this. You make me look bad. But so that goes to show you at the time, like what, the ignorance.
Right, absolutely. And
I was just surprised she did that in front of his. I was like, wow.
you got to have some real nerve
That's
to
some
do it
other
in
level.
front of someone's face like that, though.
Yeah. You don't care. It's like, hey, man, I don't care.
I don't think that.
Yeah, you gotta have a lot.
I don't think people, always understand that, like, your reputation in this industry, very small industry too. Like, it carries, like, what is said about you really carries like that. So, like, you got to be careful the way that you treat other people, especially on the way up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't know.
Yeah, on the right. Yeah, you're there crossing bridges and then burning it. It's like, man, it's a dangerous thing. Yeah, it's small. As big as the industry is, it's tiny.
And it's also, it's weird because it's like unnecessary. Like, that's not like, it's unnecessary to treat people like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that hard to just treat people with kindness, especially if you're talking about working with people, on a creative level.
Right. On a creative level. No, absolutely. It's, you have to, it's a damn, show some kind of respect. Say, hey, you know what? I didn't really hear anything. But, see if another batch. I've
Or
had
like
that
some
done
feedback
to
to
me
be
plenty of
like,
times.
I'm looking for this style of beat or something, right?
Yeah, look at right, exactly. Yeah, give me, give him some feedback. Do something, not everything negative.
But also at that
It's like,
time,
come
she
on,
wasn't
man.
like really blown up or anything, right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, so that's really coming across
I
as
can't.
like you're very arrogant in that way. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. When I heard the story, it's like, man, I can't believe that she did that.
So you weren't there for that, but Les told you about it?
The A&R told me.
Oh, wow.
The A&R, Sean C at the time. He told me.
What was his reaction?
He said he couldn't believe it. He was, like almost one of those things where I can't believe this is happening. Let this happen. Let this go by quickly. And when he told me that, let's just, he ended up, once she did the whack, 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 whatever, I heard he popped out his dat, and it's like, I'm out. With good reason, right?
Right. So you produced the song War for Triple Seis, right? Off the Terror Squad album. What was that relationship like with Seis, and how did that session come about?
Seis, all right, so I showed that beat. That beat, it was actually supposed to go to, what's his name? Oh my God, Inspector Deck.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was upset. He was like, "Man, you gave my beat away." I was like, "You weren't sure." He was like, "Oh, I'll take this one." The one he took, it was some other beat for his solo album. He goes, "Nah, I wanted that beat too." I was like, But anyway, it was wires got crossed, and I was like, "Man, I would have loved to hear him on that." But yeah, so it went to Seis, and Seis, yeah, he was, to me, Seis, I've always done good beats with Seis. The A&R would always tell me, man, you should see if you do a project with him. It'd be interesting. He always sounds good over your stuff. Like, you guys make a good team. I have actually a couple of Say songs that were never released. I got to see if I find them.
What?
We just did them. Yeah, yeah. I did them for somebody. It was actually, and it had no samples. Um, yeah, it was. I think that was the last time I saw Sace. He was actually going to school for electrical engineering or something like that. And I called him.
What year is this?
This had to be like 2004, five. No, maybe more like 2005. Yeah, around that that time. I was doing it for a company that was that would just do music for production.
Mm-hmm.
They were part of. I don't know if you ever heard of the Wolf Music, where a lot of people get samples would get their samples from. It was a music library.
Right.
Well, they had an administrator here in the States in downtown Manhattan. So they just they provide music for whatever, whether it's any MTV shows, BT, what's those networks? All those little cable networks. It's just music for production. Yeah, even the Yankees. I've heard my beats on Yankee games. But yeah, so it was for them. But they never released it. I don't know if we ever really got to finish it. I think it needed a hook. But I have stuff that never came out. Now that we're speaking, I got to see if I dig that stuff up.
So were you close to him over the years?
Yeah, I mean, we used to speak. I did actually a song with him and Cuban that never came out.
What?
And that was for that was actually a Ghetto Pros production. We recorded it in Juju's house. Um, it was the A and B side. Um, and that was around the time that the Willie Stubbs record with Cuban. It was around that time.
So do you remember
Yeah.
the session though for I'm sorry, War?
Um, you know what? Those vocals were already recorded. I went in to mix it, to hear it, and then I went into first I heard it, and then uh, I went in to mix it. Um, you know, I think Joe was like, hey, that I think he goes, I would have liked to hear somebody like G Rap on that and blah blah blah. I said I thought he sounded fine. I thought he sounded fine.
So I spoke to my brother Cuban Link the other week, right? And he said you guys have always had a good rapport. And he told me to tell you, he said, what's up?
Man, I reached out to that guy and I asked him because I about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I was like, eh, I told him, I said, hey, you working? I'd like to do a beat for you. He never answered me back, so I took it as a no. I don't know why he didn't answer me. I said, yo, I'd like to do something with you, and I never heard back from him.
What did he see it on? Was it left on scene?
I don't know. You know what? Maybe I could go back and check it. I never. It's not like I ever erased the you know the because I did it through Instagram, right? So I never. I must still have it.
Right.
I'll punch it up.
Do you know if it because like, man, Cuban in social media is just like, he doesn't always pay attention to everything, but I'm supposed to film with him after this interview. I'm gonna get on his helmet, dude. I'm gonna be like, you're supposed to be taking beats, man, because we need to get the best project possible.
I was surprised. I was like, dag, like, wow, like I don't know. I was like, all right, I guess that's a no, you know, and he had.
Nah, but he had nothing but positive things to say about you. He said that's my guy and everything. So, I don't think that it was anything personal or
Right.
anything, like that.
Yeah, I mean, I took it as maybe he wants to let the past go. Not nothing. nothing personal, right? But that's how I took it. I was like, maybe he doesn't want to deal with anybody in the past. So I left it. I left it like that. But it still left me puzzled. I'm not gonna say it didn't bother me. It did bother me
Right.
that he didn't respond, and he was like, "All right, take care." I was like, oh, "Okay." I said maybe he has a team, and maybe I don't know. To me, I was like, yeah, maybe he feels, hey, I got guys doing beats for me. You know, but
I think that what you said is partly true, is that like he's a little cautious a lot of times about where people stand because of what happened, and he always wonders if like people are on this person's side, or you know what I'm saying,
yeah,
like.
listen, I tell, it's funny because I know that there's people that I know are fans of his, right? And they'll, they'll say hateful things about Joe, but they don't really know Joe. And I told him, I said, listen, you know, I've dealt with both of them. I'm not on either side. What happened happened, but it's sad that it did happen. I thought Terror Squad was going to be out of this world. Honestly, I was like, man, this is dope. Like this is, you know, Puerto Ricans, Cuban, from the Bronx. I'm like, man, this is amazing. We've never had anything like this. Sad to see that it fell apart the way it did, right? Um, but I tell people always be careful, what side you pick. I don't pick any sides. You know, um, I think he posts funny stuff, right? But I think to me, again, I don't know if he's, how much he's working, whatever, but I think he should work. He should focus more into that. Um, I know he probably feels, hey, I'm blackballed, which isn't, it's not that it's not true, but damn, you can do stuff and put it out on your own. I work with plenty of people like that these days. And honestly,
Right.
yeah, and honestly, it's not even for revenue. People reach out to me, young dudes, and I'm like, here, take this on. Just whatever publishing, whatever. I'm not charging you. I know you don't have it, but they'll sell 4,000 pieces of vinyl out of their living room
It's better than nothing at all.
and tour. Yeah, and tour. Europe.
Yeah,
Better than nothing at all, man.
most
That's
definitely.
and they're not selling the vinyl for $10. Those vinyls are going for good money. I mean, he's also putting money into it, because he's, you see these packages, they look beautiful, like very colorful. So he's paying for all that. But, you know, hey, I saw, it's just people that's like, man, I saw what I saw. I'll cherish those times, and, I'll do music just for my own therapy. I don't, it's not like I'm looking at it. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. Like, you're talking about, I'm coming from a time where you could eat those crumbs right off the table, and but it's still, you still can make, you know, $5,000, $10,000 that month, whatever it was, eating crumbs off tables,
Right.
and that crumb could be, whatever. It could be, $5,000. It could be $10,000. You know, but and then you could get a big score. But now it's that it's a crumb is going to be a crumb.
I
You
think
know.
that it's really unfortunate that they never got to reach their full potential, you know, and because of what they meant to the Latino community, right? The
Yeah.
representation that they provided. Because, and I always say this, it's like especially when you're coming from impoverished areas like the hood and everything, a lot of times there's stereotypes about what you could possibly become in your life, what you can do with your life, right? But when you turn on the TV and you
Right.
see somebody that looks like you doing something that is outside of that stereotype, it breaks the walls down for you, and you know what I mean, really opens your eyes like, wow, I could do that too. And I felt like that's what Terror
Yeah.
Squad represented for so many people. And I think that that's why to this day, you have fans that are still hurt over that situation, right? Everybody played their part.
Yeah.
Regardless what you want to say, everyone had a
Yeah.
part in it. You know what I'm saying? Whoever you want to blame more, everybody had their part in it. And it's just sad though for the fans, I feel like, because they lost out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. No, they certainly did. Um, I always look at it in a way that, they, you get thrown into this business, right? And there's no guidance, right? There's no guidance. And even when I was in it, like in the beginning, I'm like, man, there's no guidance here, man. It'd be nice if you had managers that were actual managers that knew finance. They didn't teach us any finance, any kind of laws, anything in school, right? You get a public education, you know, especially in New York City, it's complete trash,
Nothing that you can
right?
really apply to the real world.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, nothing you can apply.
No life skills,
And it's like
basically. Just
no life
useless,
skills. No.
like dates and everything, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's everything is useless. Like you can't use any of this. And and I think in going into this business, as you get older, you look at it and say, wow, you know, how many people, how many careers really stand the test of time? It's tough because, you go from one time to, not worry, you think it's never going to end. You think that you're going to laugh to the bank every time, you know? And I go back to times that I think of and at the airport, right? I was traveling to some music conference and I was on the same flight as Rozelle and another DJ, a friend of his. So I'm hearing them speaking about Walmart and stocks. I mean, there's no Walmart. I'm like, Walmart? Man, what? I'm wondering what they're talking about. So I was just like, wow, if we had some kind of guidance where say, hey, man, do business this way, you know, put your money here, do this, do that. Um, but instead, we do business with egos and it destroys everything. It just, everything becomes a problem because we don't know how to handle money. Uh, we don't know how to protect anything that we do have. And, it's like in the beginning, like when I first started seeing I was buying equipment that I maybe didn't need. But at least I was investing in myself. Right. But, you're like, wait a minute, well, what am I doing? And it's just because you have it, you're spending it, not thinking, hey, man, let me do business this way. Let me treat my money that way. And instead of working with people, everything becomes an ego. Because I've seen it, I've seen, with the Terror Squad, Joe and Cuban arguing. I don't know, and again, I'm not taking any side. I'm just shocked that it's happening. Right? I'm like, holy shit, what am I seeing? Right? Because sometimes when you're on the outside looking in, you think everybody's getting along. You think everything is beautiful. Right?
Right.
Um, and that was for me, I saw that. That was a red flag, man. I was like, wow, that's not cool. What I just saw. Um, Again, I couldn't take no side. I don't know. That stuff like that is obviously a buildup. That's a buildup. That's something that build up that I don't know anything about.
There's a lot of ins and outs to all that stuff, little nuances and everything.
Yeah, yeah. So, and of course, one person's going to tell you something, and I not that I even asked. Joe's like, oh, you see the way they talk to me, and I'm like, yeah. And he says, oh, but it's messed up, but I don't know if
Wait, you had a conversation with Joe about this?
Yeah, well, it was it was that session when I was listening to the war, and I remember this clearly. I was standing next to Cuban. Cuban was sitting on the producer's table, what they call the producer's table, right? Um, and then Joe said, I don't know what happened, but all I know is that they were getting in each other's face.
Cuban and Joe were?
And yeah, Cuban and Joe, they were arguing, and you know, I saw Joe step back, whatever. And then I said, Joe, can I speak to you? And that was when I was asking him, hey, I'm doing this project. And he said, yeah, I guess that was still in his mind. He goes, you see how they treat me? You see? I was like, I listen, I have nothing to say. I don't know what's going on, you know. But he's like, hey, he goes, you see how they talk to me, whatever, um, and all that I do, and blah blah, and and then that was the most of the conversation. Not that I didn't want it, not that I was totally avoiding him, but in my mind, I'm like, yo, I don't know what's going on, man. You know, but he did say that, um, and he has said that, he had said the same line at another time when we were doing the Brave in the Heart, when Seis was fixing up his vocals. I remember him saying, oh, look at the studio, it's a mess. I always got to clean up after these guys. Um, they leave stuff all over the place, and you know, talking about the chicks that they bring up to the studio, and you know. But again, I don't know their side. I don't know their side. I know. Listen, I do know the fact that yeah, like it's too many people in a session. And that's a cause for disaster, right? Yeah, too many people.
Yeah, because that one thing that I never kind of understood, right, is like you're paying by the hour, aren't you? Like technically, so shouldn't it be like focused on the
and they
work?
weren't using cheap studios.
It's not a party, right?
Yeah.
It's
not a party, but that's what I mean about doing business. We don't know how to.
Right.
Unfortunately, where we're coming from, whether you were, a kid that, were getting in trouble all the time or not, for the larger percentage of everyone, they don't know how to do business, man. And that's why we're bringing friends in, and you're ordering food, and you're ordering cases of beer, or people are not showing up to the studio, and they're paying hundreds of dollars an hour because nobody was recording in cheap studios.
Right.
Nobody. I mean, I could tell you groups. Well, not to jump around, but anyway. But yeah, as far as that was concerned, that certain those sessions that I was in, I know Joe had complained about that, and not just one specific. He complained like the whole group of people.
Do you have because such a large part of my audience are Boricuas from the Bronx, right? And they love the Terror Squad stories, but do you have any like other untold stories about TS?
Nah. Except no. Only untold story is when there was like 20 something of them in the studio, and we, it was funny. We're all playing NBA Live, whatever PS2 was at the time. I wiped the floor with all of them, every single one of them. And then Seis wanted to keep on playing, keep on playing. He wouldn't stop playing me till only thing I have is fun stories. Like good times. I really don't have anything. I've heard some of your interviews, and really no street shit. I know the worst thing I saw was when they argued. That was it. But other than that,
Right,
it's
but the fans, they love the funny stories too. So did you have any like with pun or anything like that?
nah, except when Pun was acting, like one of the first times I went, this is second place when they had moved by the man, I'm bad with sections of the Bronx, but they lived by the highway. Um, and I went to Pun's house, and he was weird. He had just woken up, and he pulls out a gun. He cocks him. He's like, "Who's that? Who's that?" He's like, "Who's that thing? Who's that?" And he's looking around, and I'm sitting next to him. I was like, "Oh, come on, please, don't play around." Like, he was always very odd. Like, it was just an odd thing. It was just like, am I dreaming right now? I mean, he was so in character with this that I honestly was getting nervous. I was like, please just put that away and just be regular Pun right now. you know. But that's who he was. That's who he was.
Right.
That's who he was, man. But yeah, I mean, listen, it was a great group of guys. I wish they would have done. I wish they would have um, done what I thought they were gonna do. It would have been nice, man. You know, um, all those people that came out for Pun's funeral. It just went to show you, man, the impact that he had.
Right.
It goes to show you, man. It's like, wow, you know, this was, greatness. Like it was supposed to be, you know, maybe in a parallel universe, they're together. you know,
The Terror Squad
if,
multiverse.
yeah, yeah.
But do you remember? You remember when you got the news that he had passed away?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? It's kind of vague, but I do remember and just being in shock, like, what the hell happened? Um, but then when I heard backstories of people were bringing him food and bringing him all these things behind others' backs, I was like, well, shit, man. Like, what do you think he was getting help for?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? You know, it's and
Because did you see him over the years though? Did you see him over the years and him getting bigger?
yeah. I mean, I remember um, at a party, um, him and Cuban. I mean, they were, they had a lot to drink. I mean, they were just laughing. I looked at Plus like, wow, man, he's leaning against the bar. Um, and I was like, man, he's so big. Like, damn, like, I hope, like in my mind, I was like, man, how does a person get this big and still hold on?
Was this towards the end of his life?
Um, yeah, but no, I believe this was during. This was, well, I think maybe it was what it was 3 records, right? That he had 3 albums.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
he
this had
passed away before Yeah Baby came out.
the year before the year, baby. Okay, yes. So it had to been after the second one, or just around. He was finishing. I know he was pretty much done because we weren't on that album. So he was pretty much done, and I know it was towards the last days. And I remember specifically, they were laughing. I was like, man, these guys is, they were laughing. And, but I looked at it and I said, wow, man. I said, this guy has gotten so big, man. You know, and I've heard other stories, where people had helped him out, whether going to the bathroom, um, I don't know, I mean, the stories that I've been told. Maybe you can interview other people. I don't know if you ever thought about. There was somebody that's really close to him, raised the ratchet.
Hmm.
Maybe you should interview him. Um, he has a lot of punch stories. A lot. I mean, he was really really close to punch.
Do you have a connect with him?
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Nice. Okay. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he was supposed to be the next one. As far as I know, Pun kept on telling him. He said, "Man, I'm going to bring you out. I'm going to bring you out." And but it didn't happen, because of his death.
Right.
No other reason.
So shifting gears, when it comes to how you were treated as a producer in the industry, right? Do you feel like you were paid properly, or do you think people try to take advantage and lowball you for your work?
Yeah, I mean, well, you're always going to try. People are always going to try to lowball you. I mean, I think I was paid properly in most instances. The worst one was when I did the 2 songs for Rakim, and I think back, and I'm like I'm an idiot because I could have stopped the whole deal because they were my beats, right? And if I would have stopped it and gotten my proper pay from the producer that was leading the charge, I could have got what I needed, or at least properly paid, right? So I did the 2 songs with him with one of the producers from Bad Boy, Ron Lawrence. So I get to my lawyer's office to sign the papers, to sign the contract, and he said, "Do you know who this guy was?" I said, "Yeah, well, I mean, he grew up in my neighborhood." Um, I said, "Why? What's going on?" He said, "Well, you know, he's getting paid way more than you." And I said, "What do you mean?" So he shows me the contract. It was uh it was darkened out with a Sharpie, with a black Sharpie. So he puts it up to the light. He says it's 2 tracks, right? He's getting paid $60,000 per track. I said, "What?" So
What are you getting?
wait a minute. I'm getting 20, and he's walking away with 100. He was like, I was like, holy shit, he was like, it's up to you, I was like, let's just do the deal. But again, I could have just stopped it and been like, no, those things are my tracks. What you do, add a hi hat, you know, maybe a little sound here and there. But if I stop the deal, then now what's going to happen. Rakim is going to be upset with him, so he's not going to want that. It could have been an easy fix. I could have done that easily. I think it was just the thing of being at the lawyers and just wanting to get it over with.
Right.
And
You kind of hear stories like that though a lot in the industry, right? Where it's like somebody is the original producer, but then somebody adds like a little bit and then like they take over as like the name on it.
yeah, I mean, in this case, yeah, the reason was that Herbie Azar was he was one of the A&Rs, so he was up at Universal, So Ron played the beats for him, and then Herbie played it for Rakim, sent them to Rakim. Rakim picks one day, and then, so he calls me up, hey, Rakim picked one of the beats. Oh, all right, cool. Then the next day he calls me up, he says, yo, he picked another one. So he wants two. All right. So, in that instance, he brokered the whole deal, right? So if he doesn't go up to Universal to see Herbie, then it doesn't happen. Um, so I get it, right? I get it. But the fees, the money didn't make any sense, and I should have just put a stop to it right there and then. I think it was just the thing of working with Rakim.
Yeah, obviously working with the God himself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right. So the whole thing of being creative and the artist, so it's dangerous, right? It's dangerous because the artistry gets in the way of the business.
Or the business gets in the way,
Rather,
right?
yeah, right. So they collide. When they should work together, it should be together. Say, okay, yeah, I want to do this. And we can work this out. But sometimes it's like, oh no, no. I want to, I want to do this for this, so I don't care. I whatever it is, I'll walk away with 20. It's fine.
Any other instances where people tried to lowball you for like the artists themselves or anything?
Well, not for tracks, but for loops and like just records, like samples. Um, and I was surprised at this one because it was Steve Stout. That guy used to come to my house. Uh, Listen, he used to eat with my family, take off his shoes, what I'm saying? Video games, whatever, watch TV. Um, and one day we're in the basement, I start playing him. So he goes, hey, you know what? I'll get you paid. He was starting to manage the track masters. And he says, I'll give you $150 for every sample that you give them. I was like, 150? I was like, I'm not doing that. I said, that's all right. Let them find their own things. I'm sure they'll be fine.
$150, that's it?
So $150 for every sample.
That's crazy, man. Come on, Steve Stout.
Yeah.
Come on, you got more money than that.
I know.
Come on, bro.
Yeah, and I think it was just when he's trying, like he's just kind of, so he's probably trying to get in good with them or whatever it was. But you're not gonna do it on, on my, on my back.
What's even more crazy though is that because that you guys had a rapport prior to that though. So like, why would you?
Yeah, that makes it. Yeah, no, it does make it crazy. Yeah, why would you do that? Why would you do that when I know you and you know what I'm capable
with my
of?
Family and
yeah, and then he's I'll show him tracks. He goes, oh, I like that track, but it's EQ'd wrong because I want it for R&B and it's got more of a hip hop EQ. I'm like, so what? We can fix that. So now you just want me to hand over the sample?
Wow.
Yeah. It's, but, then again.
Can I ask you this? Because it seems to me the vibe that I'm receiving is that the industry kind of left you with a little bit of a sour taste in certain regards.
Yeah, you got the vibe. I mean, it did. It did. It just feels, it, listen, in my mind, when I make some music that I love, you feel like you have $1 million in your pocket. You feel like $1 million, right? It's like nothing can tell you any different. Nobody can tell you any different. But yes, it did leave a very sour taste in my mouth. But this is stepping back, analyzing it, um, and not mad at anybody. I've made my decision to say, hey, you know what? Um, I'm better off without it. And even when I was doing the stuff for production, right? The music for production, I was like, wow, this is great. You don't have to work with any artist. I just hand it in. It may not be as much pay, but but I see my royalties, right? And I don't
The
have.
business is right.
Yeah, the business is better. Yeah, again, there's not the advances or anything like that. Was nothing in comparison, but it was peace of mind.
And peace
Peace of
of
mind,
mind is
and
priceless, man. It's priceless.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So so that's to me that was once I started doing that and I was trying to convince younger kids to do it, they were like, no, it wasn't sexy enough for them. They wanted to work with people like 50 or whatever. Like, oh, can you get this to 50? I'm like, yeah, but you can do this and that. And like, they don't want to hear that. Like, I'm not trying to hear that. I want to work with artists.
I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like at a certain point, you just kind of get tired of all the bullshit. Right? Because when you first start out, it seemed like you started from such a pure and innocent place. It's a labor of love. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's just perfect. You know what I'm saying? And then when the money starts to come into it, then you start to notice the politics, the bullshit, having to put up with like the difficult
Yeah.
personalities and just, like it's a lot of barriers almost, to coming to create, the
Yeah.
art.
No, it is. It is. Listen, I love, like, okay. Funny thing is, right? So I go on IG. I don't follow any artists. It's almost like despise following any of these hip hop artists, new, old, whatever. You know, um, I just want to hear music, right? And coming from that place, as you mentioned, coming from an innocent place where I just want to do music. It's not about a dollar. The money comes, right? Comes into play, and that's when all the shadiness comes in. And I think it's just overall a human element, right? And I don't care if it's family, not family. You know, you'll hear family fighting over inheritance, and that's
Right.
family, right? Blood. So imagine an industry where there's vampires, literally vampires sucking the blood of you. It's tiring.
Nothing is what it seems.
It's tiring. No, no, it's not. I don't care what anyone tells you. You know, um, I think, my mind is creative. I have a creative mind in many ways. Um, and I just think of other things. It's just learning how to do that, right? Everything is learning. I learned how to use a machine. I was so passionate. I bought that MPC 60. I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have anyone I could call. Hey, how do I do this? Nah, man, I didn't have anything. First time using something like that. I figured it out. There was certain things I couldn't figure out. Whether it was the MIDI, man, I remember laying in my bed like, damn, how do I get the keyboard to work with it? And waking up 7 o'clock in the morning, grabbing the manual that I didn't read to learn how to use this, going straight to the page, reading that, figuring. I said, I got it. Running to the equipment, trying it out, and it working. So that's the kind of passion. No one's was handing me any money. I was just learning all these things on my own, and it was a peaceful thing. I was learning, right? So, you know, you take times like, instances like that, and you treasure it.
Right.
Even just learning things that weren't in the manual. That was, things like that, and it's small. It's satisfying to me. You know, I remember the MP when you started off a 2-inch reel, it wouldn't sync up right away. So your first 2 bars, whatever, would be a mess. You hear the drum, everything just sounds like an entire mess. And then then once it comes around, once it came around, then everything went straight into place. So but all your reels would start messed up. I remember showing, the people at Power Play Anton. I don't know if you know ever heard of Anton Pushansky. Anyway, he was like the head engineer over there, or one of the top engineers. And he was like, "What are you doing?" Yelling at me. And so I said, "Listen, if it doesn't work, I've done this at home already. If it doesn't work, we'll rewind it and start it again. Don't worry, I'm paying for the session." Okay, it worked. Next thing you know, next time I go, another session, and I'm setting up my stuff. And the engineer, first time I worked with this particular engineer, and he tells me, "Hey, he's trying to tell me what to do." I said, "That's my trick." I said, "I showed Anton that. I'm sure he showed it." He says, "Oh, everybody here is doing it now." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, I came up with that." So it's just things like that, man, that it's just innocent, creative, that you're not making anything off, but it's satisfying.
Right. It's a personal satisfaction.
And again, like you said,
that there's no money
it's a personal
involved,
satisfaction. Yeah, there's no money involved. Zero. But people appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah.
So at one point you end up working with No ID, right?
Yeah, I used to go out to Chicago and stay at his crib. We used to go record shopping for days, be at like one warehouse.
Was this pre-Kanye?
Yeah, before no. He had brought Kanye around. Because I remember I think the first time we went, Kanye was around. But he was never around when I would go out to Chicago. I went out to Chicago quite a few times. I'd stay at his parents' house, and I'd stay there for a few days at a time, and we go record shopping every morning. We go straight to the record store, warehouse. I mean, warehouses that took 3 days to go through, and you still didn't go through it. Where they had sometimes triple of something that you're looking for, and it's like, wow, I found 4 or 5 copies of this. It's like you almost feel bad and say, "Here, I'm gonna leave this for the next digger." That's how many things they had. And No ID, when he was first working with the Common, he would call me almost every night, asking me, "Hey, what record is this? What's the original record Large Professor got these drums from? And what is this?" And he'd call me all the time, so I'd give him titles. And I guess Chicago was so loaded that he'd find these records with no problem.
So you never got to work with Kanye though?
Yeah. No, I never got to work with Kanye. It's funny. The first time I met Kanye was at DJ Honda's house, and nobody, nobody was messing with him. Right? He was a Kanye. You see how he talker? Same thing, same exact thing, no difference. So I guess he got dumped on me. That even Juju looked at me and was laughing like, "Oh man, you're stuck with him." Not that he knew him, he was just a talker, and I'm like, so I'm listening to everything he has to say.
What is he saying?
No, he's just saying, "Hey, he goes, man, I want to do beats like y'all. I want to get some more polo. Right now today you can buy polo stores, right?" And so he's like, and it's funny because I had a polo jacket, right? And he's like, He's like, oh man. What? He goes, I love this jacket, man. This came out in blah 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 year. This, that, the other. He's telling me everything about the jacket I have on. I'm like, dude, I got this at a friends and family store. I don't care, I just saw it, I liked it, and that was it, But he knew everything about that polo jacket,
So you could tell his mind worked
So
different.
he just kept on. Yeah, no, yeah, right from there. I mean, the A&R, Peter Kang had came up to me, from Relativity, said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I know he's talking your ear off." I said, "No, you know what? I like that guy." I said, "He's funny. He made me laugh. Like, I know he spoke a lot, but I said, no, but he was fine, man." I was like, he was just different, and that, like just him being appreciative of what we were doing, the beats, saying, man, I love your beats. I want to do beats like y'all. I want to, I want to get this. I want to get that. And,
What year is this?
he just showed his appreciation. Oof, it had to have been like 92,
Wow.
93, somewhere around there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this was like just right after Intoxicated Demons. Just like around, just after that. A little bit after that, yeah. I remember him coming to, on No ID, bringing him over, to my place in Queens. And he was just quiet in a corner.
You said this is 92?
Yeah, 92. It had to have been after Intoxicated Demon. It was
so
after.
He was like 15 years old?
Yeah, he must have been 15, 16 years old at the time. Yep.
Wow. That's crazy. So then you said No ID brought him over to your house and he was just quiet? And
Yeah,
what
just
year is
quiet
that?
in the corner. Just, that had to have been after that time that I met him. So it was still, couldn't have been no more than 94.
Wow. Okay. So he's like probably like 17, 18 or
94,
something.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, something like that.
Were you surprised when you saw him blow up the way that he did?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that could have been No ID, right? But No ID was supposed to have a production deal. And he walked out of the studio. He took all his discs. I think Jay-Z and them offered him 100,000. And he was like, hell no, that's an insult for all the shit you want me to do. He got up, he took all his discs and walked out.
That's crazy.
So I guess no, Kanye was the next one in line. So I remember him calling me. He says, "Oh, I'm gonna go out, because he'd stay with me. He'd call me, he'd stay over my crib, or I think some girl in Brooklyn he knew. He'd stay over there, and yeah, I remember him. He was like, "Yeah, I have a check I need to cash," and blah blah blah, and he goes, "I'm out of here." So.
And you said the first time that you met Kanye was at DJ Honda's house?
Yes.
Dang, DJ Honda. I've been trying to interview him. He's dope, man. Like he made so many bangers back in the day that I feel like he never really got his credit for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could get you his contact too.
I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah. No problem.
So you also worked with the late Nate Dogg, right?
Yes.
What was that experience like? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like he's one of the best like chorus makers of all time.
Yeah, I think he's the best. He is the best.
Yeah.
He was the best. I have, it's funny because I still have the song on four CDs, Pro 2 files. I just had someone convert them, so I'm gonna play around with that stuff. But it was great. Well, he's professional, man. It was kind of like, you worked with Dre. I'm not going to tell you what to do. obviously, he's a professional. He knew what he was doing. And at the time when the label was saying, "Oh, you need," he would just roll his eyes, and he was like, "Listen," I said, and I told him that. Well, it was T Ray and Anton was the engineer. So I said, "Guys, leave him alone. You're gonna frustrate him. I could already tell. Don't bother him. Let him work out. I'm pretty sure he knows when he hits a bad note. And if he doesn't, then we can go back and say, hey, I think you can do this better. Let him finish." And they went, they didn't listen to me. And they went and said, hey, I think you can. He says, man, I'm warming up, man. I'm warming up. I'm getting used to the beat. I'm just warming up. I know what I'm doing. I've done this plenty of times. He was straight with them. I said, you see what I tell you, man? Just shut up. You can tell that he's just working his way through it, man. You can't see that? Like, come on. Let him do what he does. That's all. You let him get all the kinks out. Right? You get all the kinks out. And then if something is wrong, after it seems like, hey, I'm good with this, then you can go back. But
How did you end up linking with him?
man, a friend of mine. Well, so they attacked him from two angles. So the guy T Ray, that was his label, he reached out to, I think, his management. But a friend of mine that used to work for Universal, she reached out to people that knew him. She knew his management, and she says, "I think I'm gonna get." She goes, "I think I'm gonna get you Nate Dogg." And I was like, beautiful. She was helping me out with that whole project.
What year is this?
It's got to be 99. Yeah. And so she got me, because at first she got me Tash from Alcoholics, and then her friend, helped us out to get Nate Dogg. Although T Ray would take all the credit and say, "Oh, I got him." I said, "Well, maybe you reached out to him, but it was her connects that really brought it home." So yeah, that was it. And then that was the first time I met him. I'm an idiot for not and my friend that helped me out, she says, "Was he drinking Henny?" I said, "Yeah, they drank the whole bottle of Henny, but he ordered Budweiser for his friends." And he told the assistant, when they deliver the liquor, bring the Henny in here. The beers you can leave out there. And it was just like Budweisers or whatever. I was like, oh, okay. So she was like, "You didn't get the bottle signed?" I said, "Holy shit. I didn't think about that." I said, "Wow, I could have got him to sign it with a Sharpie."
Right.
I'm like, wow, man. You're not thinking of that, man.
Right.
You're really not thinking of that, But
his personality was real cool.
yeah, he was cool. He's serious, very serious. He was about his business, because when he got to the studio, he got there in a car service, a limo, which he owned the company, but charged the label, right? He, he ordered whatever food for his guys, but he was real firm with them. Like, yeah, you're not drinking from this bottle. This is mine. You guys can have that case of Budweiser. Like, he was very, he wasn't being a dick. He was just, obviously those are his buddies, right? That he's there with them. It was like a 2-hour drive or something like that from where he was coming from to that studio. So those are his friends. But he's just being, He's just being real, he's straight up. But with me, he was professional. He worked, he was a professional. Um, Everything was serious, and it was like, okay, and then, at the end of the night, he was like, hey, I think you have enough to work with. I said, we got more than enough to work with. I have stuff on that CD that I didn't even use.
So how many times did you get to work with him? Just the one time?
For the song. That one time.
Got you.
Yeah, that one time, and that was it. And then Black Rob came in to do his vocals. So honestly, I think it's the only bad boy death row record in existence.
Wow. So while we're on the topic of the West Coast, man, is it true that you sold your vinyl collection to Dr. Dre?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So
not the entire collection, but the majority of the collection. Like I took like the real like collector pieces. I took those out before. But yeah, I sold it to him.
What made you want to sell your collection?
So, I don't know if you've ever had a storage in your life, but you think you're going to have it for a month or two, and then it ends up being years. Right? So, yeah. And the guy, when I went to go get it, man, the guy told me, I said, I'm only going to be here for a few months. He started laughing at me. He goes, yeah, okay. He goes, that's what everybody says. And they're here for years. And I was like, okay, whatever. He was right. So, the unit next to me, the sprinklers went off. Something went off in there where I got water on my side. And all the bottom records were getting messed up. Right? And I was like, holy snap, man, I got to get this stuff out of here. But the records were messed up. Just the boxes and the sleeves, right? The actual record covers. Those were damaged, but you dust off the record, you're fine. That faded, I was like, man, I just got to get rid of this stuff, because I was just going there. I would stop there to get records, then I'd go to my mother's house to work. I said, man, you know what? I could just get this stuff digitalized. I'll just record samples, and that's what I was doing. I would take a stack, but then it was the thing of going back because I had just, I had gotten married, living in an apartment in the Bronx, it's a little bit tight, and then we were looking to move, and it's just everything. So I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna miss it. I'll take the ones that I really want. I had a few crates. Jared from A1 Records came by, looked at it, and he made the connection with Dre. He says, man, he goes, I could get you somebody to buy it. He goes, this is a producer's stack of records, if anything. Not like a DJ. I had DJ records, but it was more for a producer. So he got the, he brokered the deal.
So how many records are we talking about that you sold? How many vinyls?
I don't know how many vinyls. It must have been. It wasn't. I mean, it was probably like, I don't know. I say about 25 boxes, 30. About 25 boxes. I'd say, of vinyl. Then I sold them. I mean, they were good sized boxes. Some, and some crates. There was some crates there as well.
Did you say like 1,000 records?
Let's say, yeah, probably a little over 1,000 records. Yeah, I'd say over 1,000 records.
How much did he buy it for, if you don't mind me asking?
You know what? And I'm not even. Damn. You know what, man? And I it wasn't that much. It was like probably like a little less than 15 grand, something like that. It wasn't that much. I mean, and it was pulling teeth, too.
It was what?
So, I gave him one price and then gave him another. It was almost like pulling teeth. Those people don't want to spend no money. No matter how, the richer they are, the less they want to spend.
Oh, so you didn't get to meet Dre, though, but you knew that Dre was the one.
No. Yeah, no. The deal went through somebody, that he was like, he goes, I think I can get Dr. Dre to buy this music. So one of Dre's producers called me and I met up with him. He was like, I was like, so you don't want to go through any of this? And he's like, and see what's in here? Because this is it. Like, you're signing that check over to me and this is it. He said, no, listen, we've been dealing with Jared. He says this is worth it. We're good. If he said it, that's fine. And he texted me like about a month later. He's like, oh my God, Dre loves this collection. It's, and he's like, oh man, he thinks this is, like one of the best collections, blah, blah, blah. He had a lot of samples. I
Right.
mean, mostly drums. We've always been heavy on drum samples, you know.
I think it's also dope that you were actually the first one to flip the sample "The Edge" by David McCallum, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And well, the guy that broke the deal showed me the record. And if you want to hear something even funnier, it was Large Professor was supposed to go pick it up. He says he had a record. He had the record, and he wanted to show Large Professor. As he called him, he said, "Hey, I have a record, man, a good sample that whatever." And he says, I've been waiting for days. He's never came by. You can buy it if you want."
So for you guys that don't know, that's the sample that Dre used for the next episode.
Yep.
That's crazy. Wow. And you never got credit for that, man. That was a dope flip that you did on there.
Oh, thank you. What, Fat Beats never wrote my name? Really? No. Fat Beat. It came out through Fat Beats. I think they gave me credit for it. I'm sure
No,
they
I
did.
mean like, like from
Oh, as
like the
far as
fan base,
yes,
like the note,
yes.
you know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right.
Giving you like credit to like your flowers for that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I think the source had something. I forgot who wrote it, but they did have something of who flipped it better or something to that
Mm-hmm.
effect. So um, yeah, but it is what it is, man. That's what and I remember showing it to people and they're like, "Oh wow, you used it before." But I like the way Dre did it because it's just slower and you can feel the groove and blah blah. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what you're used to. That's why they say that. But it's great. Well, one thing, the good thing is this. So, Kid always had a saying: "At least you know you're not crazy." Certain things you do, and then somebody else would do it after. He'd be like, "Well, you know what? At least you know you're on the right track and you're not crazy."
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
you know. All right,
All right. Last question. What are your top 5 beats of all time that you produced?
5 top beats. Um, I think Uptown Hit, Curious George. Um, are you ready? Beatnuts, Coogee Rap, My Life. Um, uh, Boomerang, Pum, and mm, I don't know. It has to be between Misery Needs Company and no. You know what? Erase that. The Professional. With DJ Clue's album Mobb Deep.
Nice. Okay. And then what are your top 5 beats that other people have produced?
Um, one, the one Juju did for Ghostface. Um, Marley Marl, the Pink Cookies. Um, Buck Wild, Whoa. Um, with the DJ Premier, it's hard because it's like quite a few. But I think I may have to go with the one. It's either between the Royce 591,
Boom.
the Boom.
That's a
Yeah,
classic beat.
yeah. It's yeah. It was between that and the one, the Big L one with Big Daddy Kane.
Mm-hmm.
But I may have to go with Boom. Um, beat wise. Uh, what's that for?
Yeah. One more.
And one more. Um, man. Uh, oh. Um, Tribe Called Quest. The um, the Steve Binko.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that song. That's one of my. I'm always playing that.
Okay. And then who are your top 5 hip hop producers of all time?
Mm.
I know it's
Oh,
hard.
that's a hard one, man. I have two in mind. One would be Premier.
I knew it.
Yeah, because you say hip hop is that's it. It's his face.
Right.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. Pete Rock,
Fire.
Buck Wild, um, um, I mean, honestly, Juju and Les.
So
You know,
Beatnuts.
Beatnuts.
That's
Yeah, let's
right.
just say Beatnuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. There's so many that I could say. I could say Alchemist, but I may be missing one. Um,
No Dre, huh? A lot of people would say Dre.
yeah, you know what? I like Dre, but um, I mean, and I think in the towards the end of my, like the 2000, going into the 2000s, end of the 90s, I started doing more of a clean sound, and honestly, that was my inspiration, the whole Dre thing. You know, if you ever heard the Ghetto Pros album, how it's put together, it was more of an inspiration from him. So yeah, so I may say Dre, Dre. Yeah, I think Dre. Um, especially the Chronic, that Chronic album.
The first one?
I really no the one the
2001.
2001. Yes, first one was
Amazing.
great too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 2001. I mean, I remember listening, taking trips all the way upstate, 4 hours driving, and just having that
I just
album
think
on.
2001, the sound just seems so much bigger, like so much more
Yeah,
clean, right? Like
yeah,
there was
it's
a
huge.
grittiness to the first Chronic album almost.
Yeah,
You know?
right. Yes, no, there was, and but the other one sounded, even it's clean. It was just like an like it was. I don't know. It was well orchestrated,
Right.
and that's the best words I can find.
All right, V.I.C. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today, man. You got anything else
Thank
you
you,
want to
brother.
say before we go ahead and wrap it up?
No, I mean that's about it, man.
I'm sorry, I know that we didn't get
If
to
you want to,
cover everything because your story is just so extensive, bro. Like your career, there's just so many different ways that we could have went, but I knew that we had like a limited amount of time too.
no, I got you, man. If you want to do another part, you know, let me know.
Yeah,
Whatever
we'll
you
do
want.
another one in the future, man, for sure.
Yeah. Just let me know, and yeah, and have a Cuban call me, man. Reach out.
Yeah. I'm about to see him right now. I'm gonna let him know. But man, like you don't do a lot of interviews. Like I think like I only seen like the uncut interview, the one
Right.
that's like in like text, right? Like that's like I haven't really
Yes,
seen you do any
yes.
video
Right.
ones.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, any interviews I've done is really like underground, like people that I don't know. I guess the core fans. if you want to say that. Those are the most, the people that do, smaller interviews, people that are really, the heads, like, oh my God, Um, I remember one time,
Because I don't feel like you get your props, bro, like that you deserve, man.
yeah, you're not the first one to tell me that. I mean, a lot of people say that. Um, sometimes it is what it is, honestly, because you can see that throughout history of music.
Right.
You know, um, producers that you may know, what in any genre, going back in time, and most people won't know them. You know, so
Because if you just told me that there's a producer that produced for Terror Squad, right? A lot of records for Pun too, right? And produced for KRS-One, Rakim, you know what I'm saying? Just like to name like some pretty big artists, like I don't know how your name isn't up there more.
right, right.
That like being mentioned, you know what I'm saying? Like that's why like it kind of really surprised me when I started to look for interviews. I'm just like, I can't really see anything. Like that's crazy.
Right. Well, yeah. No, I think about that too. It's funny because I think my youngest son is one of my biggest advocates. He'll go around, his school, and teachers would be familiar with the music, and he'll go into Spotify, and I have my discography or whatever they have available, and he starts showing his teachers like, "Wow, you did this, did that," But yeah, it's just it's just one of those things. It's just, hey man, did it for the love of it. Um, and was fortunate enough to make a living out of it. You know, you
Right.
think about all the music that comes out, right? People that have tried and done this, and you know how many, what's the percentage that could really say, hey, I made a living out of it and had a good run?
Facts.
How
But
many?
also have timeless records though.
Yeah.
Timeless
All right,
records, you
thank
know what
you.
I'm saying? Especially the way that music is consumed nowadays, where it's a what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
We're consuming it super fast, you
Oh yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. No, it's true. What you saying, consuming it. I mean, I don't know if you remember ABB Records with Benny B.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good friend of mine. And when all these MP3s, he's like, music is so disposable and it's only going to get worse. He says, imagine I could go into my iTunes and get rid of 2,000 songs and not miss it because they're all digitized. Imagine. I was like, wow, music is this, just is so dispensable, and I guess that's why I keep on going back to my playlist, and it's all older stuff, you know,
Right.
it's all older stuff. I mean, only reason I don't know anything new is because of my boys, you know, that's the only reason I don't know about any new artists, but, I try to train their ears like, hey, so, they'll like all the 90s stuff and things like that. But, it was a time, and I think with digitizing everything, it just ruined everything. And that's why I can
Mm-hmm.
appreciate people that'll sell vinyl right out of the living room. And even if they sell, 1,000 pieces, that's great. Because, remember, you're also charging like 20, 30 bucks or more,
Right.
I tell the Beatnuts every time, man, you guys need to, when you go on tour, make a record just for the tour. Vinyl just for the tour. If you didn't get it, you didn't get it. If you didn't come out to the show and sell them for a couple $100 or $100 or something like that, you'll get it.
Special limited
If
releases, right?
special, yeah, for that tour. That's it. You're gonna go out for 2 months, press up enough records for that. You don't buy it at this tour, you're never gonna see it again.
It's crazy, yeah.
You know.
All right, Vic,
Yep.
man, it's
All
a
right,
pleasure, bro.
pleasure,
Salute to
brother.
you,
Thank
bro.
you. We finally did it.
Yep.
Sorry for the back and forth, but we got it
It's
in.
all good, man.
All right, man.